And we are live. Hello, everyone. I still don't have all the lights on. Look, it's so dark in here. Hey, chat room. I haven't even popped this out. I don't even know what we're looking at. I tried to start the live stream just now, and YouTube told me live streaming is not available right now. And I thought, well, this will be a very short study group. We'll do it all over chat. It'll be a text only. But no, I did the thing where you turn it off and you turn it back on again. I effectively reloaded the page and everything worked fine. And here we are. Hey, chat room. Hey, everybody. Let's get some lights on. I don't have lights in the background, so I look like this right now. That's not what we're shooting for. We need lights. Lights in the background. It's amazing what a difference a couple of lights make. Let's see. It's this one right here. And this needs to get paused, and that needs to be clicked. Okay. Let's log into our lights. I have a power distribution system. I log into the power distribution system, turn on 2 lights, on, next, apply, and now there they are. We have lights. And we'll log out. Okay. Another thing that happened. Here's another thing I was doing yesterday. I was recording the 1102 videos yesterday. This is my headset. It's kind of hard to see in that view, but that's the headset for my left ear. This is the headset for my right ear. These look decidedly different. These look remarkably different. The whole thing just fell apart. So now my right ear is not going to be connected. So I'll hear half of what I say today. I guess that's the rule. Okay, but I do hear it, so that's the good part. I kind of like doing it with one ear. I can hear the stream or what you hear, and in the other ear I can hear me, which normally I don't. So I might just keep it like this. That's a pretty good way to do it if I can get all the wires down the way. Hey everybody, hey chat room. Thanks for being here. Thanks for checking in with us. We got a live stream today. We're starting at the top of the hour. It's 54 minutes after the hour. We're starting at straight up 12 noon my time. And we're doing plenty on this live stream with the 220 1002 questions. I've got them ready to go here. Might as well get that. That's ready to go. All right. This could be a little bit closer so I could do something with it. Works fine for me. Yes, I am not stereo. Technically speaking, I'm never stereo. This is always a mono single channel audio that I put on both the left and right side. For a little background, little inside baseball for you there, because what would you need stereo for someone talking? That's the idea. So we save a little bit of bandwidth because it does cost bandwidth. It does cost extra space in the file to have a stereo signal. So by having a mono signal, I have a little more room available for video, which is kind of nice. Mohammed in the chat room, can we join this session and do the Q&A without joining the course subscription? Absolutely. This is an absolutely free live stream. Anybody can join. Anybody can participate. There's no limitations. There's nothing you have to buy. Nope. You're good to go. So we'll get this. What could cause damage to my hearing? Oh, we're well past that, Chris. There's damage to the hearing. We've already done it at this point. I would think having both headphones in would, but there's no potential damage because the audio that's coming through this headset is so small to be able to do that. Yeah, I don't have a balance setting to change on this one. I do, but I'm not going to. We're good to go. I like the way it comes out on the final design, on the final result. It's kind of warm in here, though. Let's turn some AC on. Are we currently running without air conditioning in here? I believe we are, which is just a horrible idea. No, it's just way up there. And let's turn it down to this. Excellent. Okay. Hey everybody, I'm finally at the point where I can read the chat room. So now I can check up and see there's people checking in from downtown Houston and from the Bahamas and from St. Vincent, and Bradenton is here. I'm assuming Florida. Is there another Bradenton? There's got to be another Bradenton somewhere, but of course it's Florida. Costa Rica's checking in. The lights in the AC is definitely an IoT device. The lights are not. The lights are a traditional web service that I can access locally within just my studio. They are not cloud-based, and they are not what you would consider to be IoT. They're a little heavier than an IoT. By heavier, I mean not as streamlined, not as heavy an operating system, a heavier operating system than something that might be IoT related. But it still works quite well. Hello, Tacoma, Washington, and Chicago, and Washington State, and Las Vegas, and Gainesville, and Louisville, and Madison, Florida, or Madison, Wisconsin. Of course, it's Madison, Florida. What was I thinking? No, it's probably not Madison, Florida. New York is here. Switzerland, welcome. Nice to have you here. Washington, D.C. is here. Northern Virginia, Zurich City. Nice. Michigan, Chattanooga, Tennessee. Haven't been there in a while. We've got Wisconsin. We've got Tampa. We've got South Africa and Atlanta and Tijuana. A lot of folks checking in. This is great. Thanks for being here, everybody. We're going to go live in about 2 minutes. This is the pre-show. This is not the actual show. This is me. You know what I haven't done yet? I've not turned on the recordings. You don't see my Cylons going down here, do you? So watch that space as I power on the recordings. I haven't done my podcast intro either. Let's do that real quick, shall we? I'm James Messer, and you're listening to the Professor Messer 220-1002 Core 2A Plus study group. This study group was recorded on June 9th, 2022. If you'd like to watch a video replay, visit my website at professormesser.com. I'm James Messer, and you're listening to the Professor Messer 220-1002 Core 2A Plus Study Group After Show. This after show was recorded on June 9th, 2022. If you'd like to watch a video replay, visit my website at professormesser.com. Glad that was done. Can't we just have that done automatically through some type of process or system? Doesn't it seem like that's what should happen? But there it is. Yeah, I guess Apple is, that is their new favorite place, isn't it? Ventura. I watched the, or is it Ventura? I think it's Ventura. Have I been saying it wrong all these years? Is this a Boise thing? I think it is. And of course in the chat room, you'll have to put it down in some type of form. That works fine. Less than a minute to go. Let's see if we can get our keynote going. I need a green light. Green light looks good. We got slides there. Cameras are good. We are now recording. See, I said both though. Did I say Ventura or Ventura? See, is it sure? There's no R there. I don't know why I'm saying Ventura. You're Ventura. I don't know. And look at that. Just lost the connection. I love it when the network's doing that. Ace Ventura or Ventura? That's how it works around here, folks. It's top of the hour. It's time for a study group. Let's see if I can make something happen here. Here we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the June 2022 Professor Messer 220-1002 Core 2A Plus study group. This is the study group where I ask you questions that come directly from the CompTIA exam objectives, and then you can answer them online. I'll tell you how to do all of that in just a moment. Thanks for being here. Thanks for joining us. And although you can't participate online if you are not here live, you could still follow along with what we're doing and see how well you can answer these questions. If you would like to participate live, you can go to this website, professormesser.com/QA. Just pop open a new browser window and head over to that URL, and you can enjoy the questions and answers. You just stay on that page. You don't have to click anything else. Just stay right there and happily click along as we go through question 1, question 2, question 3, and everything else. We have a lot to go through today. Before we do that, let's look at a question if you were able to. Oh, and also, I'll also mention if you would like to use an app, you can use the Socrative student app. Of course, there's an app. That's the one you want to download from your favorite store. And the room name is Professor Messer. We'll ask you for that room name when you log in. Professor Messer, all one word, ProfessorMesser. Now, if you do all of that and it looks like it's working, then you will see a question from last month. And this is one that I call my rewind question. That question says, an administrator would like to use a centralized authentication system for all VPN users. Which of the following would provide this functionality? Is it Radius, AES, WPA2, TKIP, or CCMP? Now, if you think you know the answer, you follow that link that's on your screen, professormesser.com/QA. Please don't put answers in the chat room. Please don't put any hints in the chat room. Instead, you want to read the question, which says an administrator would like to use a centralized authentication system for all VPN users. Which of the following would provide this functionality? Is it Radius, AES, WPA2, TKIP, or CCMP? Now, lock in your question or your answer to the question. We will come back to this in just one moment. Thanks for being here. We do one of these study groups for each of my training courses every month. I have a whole set of brand new questions I ask every month. So these are all things you've never seen before. These are all brand new. We're going to go through each one of them so that you can really break down why a question is right and why the answers may be right or wrong. The exam that we're working with today is the 220-1002. This is an exam that was released on January the 15th, back in the day of 2019. So much has happened since this version has been released, hasn't it? The retirement date, no longer an estimated retirement date. These exams go away on October the 20th, 2022. So that is a very good place to be if you're someone who is working their way towards earning their A+ certification and you're planning to take the 220-1001 or 220-1002. You have to get both of those passed by October the 20th. So that's your time frame, and there's still plenty of time to do that. You just have to make sure that you schedule appropriately. The exam itself is a 90-minute exam. Each one of them is 90 minutes long. For the 1002, which is what we will be talking about today, you need to earn a 700 on a scale from 100 to 900. And although the exam retires on October the 20th, if you are certified before that date, your certification is still good for 3 years. So it doesn't matter what they do to the questions that they're asking you. Once you get certified, you're locked in. And you earn exactly the same certification by passing both of these exams as you earn by passing the 1101 and 1102. If you weren't looking closely, you'll notice that did change on the screen because a new series of exams has come along. We know if we're going to retire in October that something has to be released before that, and indeed it was. The release date was April the 20th for these two exams. They are, I guess you consider them the newer of the two series. These, since they just came out, will probably retire somewhere around November of 2025. A lot to do there. The exam requirements are exactly the same, and it really doesn't matter which pair of these you take. You just have to make sure you take both of them from the same exam series. So you can't take the 1001 and the 1102 or the 1002 and 1101. You have to take them both from exactly the same series. So that's an important one to think about. So if you take 1101 and you don't get around to taking the other exam before it's retired, you have to start all the way over again. So pick very carefully which series of exams you're planning to take because it could have a pretty dramatic effect on your time and your money ultimately. The 220-1002 or the Core 2 exam covers operating systems, security, software troubleshooting, and operational procedures. So we're going to go through all of those different types of topics in this live stream today. We'll let you also know that there's some free questions on the website. My Take 10 Challenge questions are available for the 1001 and 1002. They are archived from these study groups, so you can always find some Q&A on the website at professormesser.com/take10. I'll also let you know that there will be a replay available of this live stream immediately afterwards on YouTube. does a couple minutes for processing, and then you can watch the video as we had it. It's just an automatic process. I also take an audio version of the replay and make it available in podcast format. If you have a podcast listening program and you'd like to add it to your list of automatically downloaded podcasts, you can do that by visiting professormesser.com/podcast. There is a podcast there for A+, Network Plus, and Security Plus, and they are all audio replays of these study groups. If you go out to YouTube about a day after we do one of these events, you'll notice that timestamps have magically appeared on the website, and that magic comes to us thanks to my marketing manager, Lori, who is listening to this on the replay. Everybody say hi to Lori. She's going through and hopefully at 2x speed, figuring out where all the timestamps are for all of the questions, all of the answers, everything in the after show. It's a great resource, and it's available going back years on every single one of these study groups. That's in the YouTube video description. Now, we also have, when I am not here doing a live stream, a chat. You can go to our chat that's on the website. It's a Discord server. Go to professormesser.com/Discord or click the icons in the upper right of my website to connect to the Discord server. And if you want to send me a note or talk to other people who are studying for their A+ exam, it's a great community. We like to have people show up and try to get through all of these challenges that you constantly are facing throughout your studies. We can make it just a little bit easier. I think that's our goal. Go to professormesser.com/Discord. Eventually, you're going to need to take your exam. The exams themselves you can purchase from the CompTIA or Pearson VUE website at full price. But why would you pay full price for your voucher? You want to get a discounted voucher, but nobody likes to search the internet and try a bunch of coupon codes that don't work and find some sketchy third-party site that tries to install something bad on your system. Instead, what if the vouchers were just automatically discounted, that there was no coupon code, that you didn't have to run through a series of steps and do homework just to get a discount? Now we've got it. If you're in US and Canada, I have vouchers on my website that are already discounted for every CompTIA website. You can pick that voucher, and not only do you get the voucher at a discount from what you would pay at full price, but I also include my Exam Hacks ebook, an ebook that you can't purchase. You can, well, I guess you can purchase it, but not by itself. You get it with my Success Bundle, or you get it with these vouchers. There's no other way to get your hands on this Exam Hacks ebook, but I thought it would be good to add that because the Exam Hacks ebook has tips and tricks that can perhaps get you some extra points on your exam, and that's what we're trying to do here, is to get you that exam and be able to pass that exam. This is something that might help you too. You can find out more about that at professormesser.com/vouchers, and we sure appreciate the support that you've already shown there. Thank you so much, those of you that have already purchased vouchers. It does help keep the lights on, so thank you so much. Let's talk about that question that we went through earlier, which was, or is, an administrator would like to use a centralized authentication system for all VPN users. Pretty common. Which of the following would provide this functionality? Would it be Radius, AES, WPA2, TKIP, or CCMP? Let's see how you answered. We look here, 74%, which, by the way, is much improved over the question I asked last month. 74% said Radius was the answer. 11% said WPA2, 7% CCMP, and then down at 3 and 4%, we have AES and TKIP. So that is one certainly that you can address or think about as you're planning to provide centralized authentication is Radius. Radius, of course, is the Remote Authentication Dial-In User Service. That is what Radius stands for. It is an abbreviation, although it's also a word. And we sort of play off the word of the abbreviation with other protocols as well. But this is very, very common to use. It's available on many different operating systems, not only for the clients, but also the servers. Almost every environment has some type of Radius system somewhere that's available, or you have the ability to install a Radius front end on an existing set of access directories. So if you have Active Directory, there's a Radius front end you can get for Active Directory, for example. So this doesn't have to be a standalone Radius server that only does Radius. This could be Radius that's provided through an existing service that you might already have. 76% of you chose Radius. Answer A, that's absolutely correct. That's what we were looking for. If you chose WPA2, you were probably thinking about wireless encryption. And in fact, TKIP and CCNP are also part of WPA and WPA2. In this case, we're not talking about wireless authentication. We're talking about authenticating VPN users to the network. So those protocols would, in many cases, not be used. AES is an encryption protocol, and AES could certainly be used for some type of encryption, but we were thinking about authenticating users and passwords. In that particular case, Radius is the best possible answer here. 76% of you answered A Radius, and that is the correct answer. Well done. So I think some of you remembered some of those topics from last month because you did very well on that question. Now, how about some new questions? And of course, I always write new questions for every study group. This first question of the study group is a performance-based question. Performance-based questions are questions that are not multiple choice. The one that we just did, this is a question with multiple choices available. And all you have to choose is A, B, C, D, or E. You could just randomly choose whatever answer it might be. But for what we're doing at the beginning of the exam, in fact, you'll get a handful of questions at the beginning of the exam. Those handful of questions are something other than multiple choice. They could be fill in the blank. They could put you at a command prompt. They could be a matching question. It could be a drag and drop. You might have to put things in a particular order. You never know what you'll be working through. So I have for you a performance-based question. This is a matching question. Let's see how you do with this 220-1002 Core 2 A+ question that asks, match the command to the description. And I have 4 commands. They are netuse, chkdsk, nslookup, and gpupdate. I know I'm saying them funny, but that's intentional. Those are the 4 commands: netuse, chkdsk, nslookup, and gpupdate. And then I have 6 different descriptions. So if you do the math here, 2 of the descriptions will not be used. We'll have some that are just not used. The 6 different descriptions are: view the route between 2 devices, force a configuration update to a remote computer, repair logical file system errors. You also want to, as I step through this, do I have my questions up? I sure do. Map a network drive, resolve the IP address for www.professormesser.com, and initialize a partition. So let's go through all of those again for those of you listening in on the podcast side. Your 4 commands are netuse, checkdisk, nslookup, and gpupdate. See, I'm giving you hints as we go. Those 6 different descriptions are: view the route between 2 devices, force a configuration update to the remote computer, repair logical file system errors, map a network drive, resolve the IP address for www.professormesser.com, and initialize a partition. If you think you know the answer, follow that link that's on your screen, professormesser.com/QA, and you can lock in your answer. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. That's our standing rules. So we're going to all pretend that we're in the room taking our exam. We don't have Google. We don't have Google. We do not have Google, and we don't have anyone we can ask. So we're going to see what we can do, which means if you don't know the answer, always guess what the answer is. This was a question that came up. I don't know if I was reading it in a chat. I think it was in one of the Discords that I follow, where someone found a comment about questions on the exam and whether you should or should not answer them. And the answer is you should always answer every question on the exam, whether you know it or not. If you leave a question blank, you don't earn any points. Now, they don't take any points away from you if you get a question wrong, so you're not penalized per se, but you don't get any points if you leave it blank. And the game here is that we start at 0, or in the case of CompTIA, we start at 100, and we add points every time you get a question right. The number of points you get depends on the question. Every question has a different number of points. So you have to get a question right to earn points. So if you leave a question blank, you don't get any points. And that's why I always tell people, always fill in. Do a Christmas tree. Make everything A or B or C or whatever your favorite letter is. Just fill it all the way in if you're out of time. Like there's 30 seconds left. Everything that's left, A, and hopefully you'll get 25% of them correct. And that'll be free points for you. But don't leave them blank or you'll absolutely get 0 points, and that's not what we're shooting for. So always go through these and answer something on the exam. You never know, you might fall into some free points. Let's see how you did with this one. Let's have a look at the answers that we have. The question was, match the command to the description. And our first is net use. The net command has many different functions. It's a Windows command. You don't see the net command in this context used in other operating systems because that's a Microsoft-specific command. And the net use command specifically is used to map a network drive, to be able to assign a drive letter to a selection or a share that might be on the network somewhere else. So that allows you and the applications you're using to be able to access that share using that drive letter instead of using the UNC, which is the very long couple backslashes, the name of the server, a backslash, and then the name of the share. That's an involved thing to have to remember every time you're trying to save a file. Why don't you just name it G:, and then we'll type in, where do I want to save it? I'll save it on G, or save it on H, one of those. That's what we do when we're looking at mapping a network drive, and NetUse works perfectly for that. Next on our list is check disk. I kind of gave away the name. CHKDSK is check disk. That's what it does. And if you look through the listing of the different options here, repairing a logical file system is certainly something that check disk can do. Check disk also has the ability to physically scan all of the sectors of your storage drive. So that's another one where it certainly helps if you're trying to identify problems with a drive or identify where data may not be stored safely. It may have corruption associated with it. We can check our drive to see if it really is able to read and write from every single sector, which means the bigger the drive is, the longer that sector test is going to take. But the basic function of repairing the logical file system errors can usually be done in just a matter of minutes. So that helps too. So the answer for check disk is C, repair logical file system errors. Third on our list is NSLOOKUP. NSLOOKUP, name service lookup, specifically for our DNS servers, which is why it would be answer E, resolve the IP address for www.professormesser.com. Of course, that's how you would find it. And that's what we have to do because we don't normally type in IP addresses in our browser. We type in professormesser.com. We can't type in CompTIA.org. We don't type in 162.something.something.something. We're typing in very specific names that we can remember as humans, and then this name resolution process behind the scenes takes care of converting that name to an IP address. And if you wanted to manually do that to see what IP address would pop up for a particular name, you use the NSLOOKUP command. Last on our list is GP update. GP update. This is not a medical command. This is forcing a configuration update, specifically a group policy update, that's the GP, to a remote computer. So if you're working in a help desk and you need to roll out a configuration setting that requires that all passwords are 8 characters or longer, that's a very common administrative configuration that you would like all systems to comply with. And if that's the case, then you'll want to use GP update. When you configure the group policy, you can push it out and update all of the group policy servers so that you're able to make those all work properly. Those are the 4 we were looking for. NetUse is map a network drive. Check disk is repair logical file system errors. NSLOOKUP is resolve the IP address for www.professormesser.com. And GP update is force a configuration update to a remote computer. That means we had 2 that were left over, which was view the route between 2 devices and initialize a partition. And why don't we do some bonus answers? What would we use to view the route between 2 devices? I can think of one really useful application or program or utility to do that. There's a couple you could use, but the one I have in my mind is traceroute. There are others you might have used for that, but you have to have something that shows you every link along the way, and traceroute certainly does that. And of course, in Windows, you don't type in traceroute, you type in traceRT, but it's the same utility. We refer to that as traceroute. And lastly, initialize a partition. It's a very vague term, but I think you know what we're talking about there. We're talking about formatting a partition, adding a file system to an existing partition. So that's what we would use. There are other ways to initialize partitions. Fdisk, the Fdisk that we don't really see much used anymore. We have other disk commands at the command line. There are multiple ways to do this. So format, disk part, Fdisk. There's been many ways to do this through the years. And you could even use, of course, the Windows Disk Administration, Disk Configuration tool. So lots of ways to make that happen. I'll accept any one of those. If you were thinking about those, people in the chat room were calling those out. I'll accept all of them. All of you are right. I love it when everyone's right. So we can all take a +1 on that one. Now, another question that came up in the chat room, and let's talk about this for just a moment, is that with 6 different options and 4 questions to choose from, you might get some of them right. You might get all of them right, but there might be, it's not an all or nothing situation. You could get 2 right and 2 wrong. Does that mean you get half credit? CompTIA has documented on their website that there are times when they will provide you with partial credit, but they don't tell you when those times would be. They just say, yeah, we could do that if we wanted to. We might not, but we could, and we'll never tell you when that happens. So even though it's useful to know or have some little insight into the CompTIA grading process, they don't tell anybody how anything is graded. And if you ever run into somebody who tells you, oh, I know exactly how these are graded, I know that they change these exams to be harder or easier, and I know exactly when that happens, they have no idea. There's no possible way you would know that because CompTIA will never tell anyone when that happens, if it even does. And up to this point, there are many of these things people think about online that could be happening that clearly are not based on the data that we are seeing. So the only thing you can really do is just do the best you can on the exam. Don't worry about the grading process. Don't worry about whether the exam might get harder or easier in the future, which almost never happens. What we want to really think about is, do we know everything on the exam objectives? And if you do, you should be able to get through these very easily. This is just a subset of the commands that you need to know. If you don't know these commands, make sure you go back to the exam objectives and go through the list of all of the Windows commands, all of the networking commands, all of the Linux commands. There are a lot on the exam, so make sure you're familiar with those. Hopefully you did well with that performance-based question. That's a good way to get started. Let's do some now multiple choice-based questions, which ultimately will be the bulk of the exam that you plan on taking. This next question asks, as I click it on your side, a user has replaced their monitor with a new model, but Windows now shows a blank screen after the Windows startup logo. Which of the following would be the best next troubleshooting step? Should you reseat the video adapter, run SFC, update the BIOS, reinstall the boot partition, or start in VGA mode? A user has replaced their monitor with a new model, but Windows now shows a blank screen after the Windows startup logo. Which of the following would be the best next troubleshooting step? Would it be to reseat the video adapter, run SFC, update the BIOS, reinstall the boot partition, or start in VGA mode? If you think you know the answer, oh, I should probably put the link on the screen. There it is, ProfessorMesser.com/QA. Lock in your answer, and you'll be able to make that happen. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. While we're waiting, I want to scroll back. I saw you, Zerky Durkey, in the chat room with the $15 super chat. I just liked saying that. How could I let that one go by? Zerky Durkey says, passed Core 1 solely thanks to your videos. Not solely, because you're the one that took the exam. But I'll hand most of that credit back to you. And you were using the audio study groups via Spotify, which is a great way to do it. All of these study groups can be found on many of those streaming services after the fact. So you can always go to the Spotify and the different places, the Google Podcasts and the Apple Podcasts. They're all there. Zerky Durkey says, Core 2 is scheduled for next week. So fantastic. Congratulations on your Core 1. You're halfway there. Now you have plenty of time to get this Core 2 locked in. And if it's scheduled for next week, I think you're going to crush it. You're going to kill it. So congratulations on that. Make sure you check back in or send me a note when that Core 2 is done. I love to get stories of when people pass their exams. It's very motivating as I'm sitting here in this dark room trying to get more content out that you're saying, yeah, it does work. So that's, yeah, I'm a little jealous of the name. Professor Messer sort of goes off the tongue. So maybe there's a little bit there, but Zerky Durkey, I don't know. Maybe I missed it. Maybe I missed an opportunity. And if you don't have that domain name, you should go get it. And also, before we answer this question, Randy in the chat room says in the exam instructions, it says that they could throw in questions that don't count, but are for analysis. Yeah, they do put that. I think it's more of the lawyers putting that in because as we've seen in the exams, pretty much all of the exam stays very close to the exam objectives, almost exactly to the exam objectives. So although they could put other things on the exam, they don't really actually tend to do that. There might be one or two they might throw in, but it happens so rarely that that's not something you should worry about. Let's see how you did with this one. A user has replaced their monitor with a new model, but Windows now shows a blank screen after the Windows startup logo. Which of the following would be the best next troubleshooting step? This is troubleshooting a blank screen. This is a very specific troubleshooting option that's in the domain 4, I guess it is, of, or domain 5? No, domain 4 of the 1002. Reseating the video adapter, running SFC, updating the BIOS, reinstalling the boot partition, or starting in VGA mode. What do you think the answer is? You think the answer, 62% of you, so that's definitely a majority, say start in VGA mode. And then you've got 22% of you that say reseat the video adapter. And then 10%, double digits still, say update the BIOS. We got single digits, 4% said run SFC, the system file checker, and then answer D is reinstall the boot partition. Well, 62% of you said you would start in VGA mode. And VGA mode, of course, in that particular option might be a good one because there might be times when you start up your system and there's no screen. There's no login, maybe no desktop. It depends on where the problem is and what it's associated with as to what the symptoms might be. So one of the things you can do, especially if you see some information go by and then suddenly you no longer have information on the screen, then something has happened with the video output. It could be something inside of Windows. So one way to get everything back to a very common and generic type of video format is to hit F8 when you're starting up and to choose Start in VGA mode. That's what 63% of you said you would do. And you got it absolutely correct. That is what you would do to be able to perhaps bypass whatever weird video issue is happening after the Windows logo is displayed. Now, once you do that, there are other things you could do. This might be a corruption of the operating system itself, and you could begin making changes to the system by running System File Checker. This will run, since you can't get to the Windows prompt, you'd have to run this from the recovery console, but you could certainly run it. If it finds a system file that is not what it was expecting, maybe that file has been changed either by you or some other process, it will replace it with a known good version of that system file. That is the System File Checker. That's why we often say if you're cleaning something from your system that may be malicious, maybe you should also run SFC just to make sure that all of your Windows files are in really good shape. So we also have updated driver. If the driver is the issue of your monitor, you might want to update the driver, which means you go into safe mode to do that, and you can download that from a known good source. Absolutely the case there. And of course, if something has been corrupted and ultimately you'd like to go back to the way everything was, you can perform a restore or a repair to see if you can resolve what that happens to be. So that is exactly what should happen, but that is certainly one of those types of black screens that could occur and some of the things you should do. Now, this question asks specifically what the best next troubleshooting step happens to be. And in this case, once we saw the logo there for Windows and suddenly everything went black, that is not normal operation. First, you should absolutely recognize that this is not normal. Windows doesn't do this by default. There's no third-party process that would do this. Your screen should effectively never go black. That's unless it is doing some type of update that you have initiated, and sometimes these updates do update things like drivers and other pieces. That doesn't happen immediately after you start up Windows and get the logo. And even if it did, it would only be black for just a moment, and then you'd have your video back. So the right answer is the one that is the best next step, not the best step in the future kind of thing. We're thinking, what can we do right now that can give us more information about the problem without changing anything? And I think that's a step that we often forget when we're troubleshooting, is that we should be collecting all the information we can And if we do start to do any type of troubleshooting, let's start with some tasks that are not going to change anything in the system, because it could be that changing things in the system create even more problems later on. We need to have something that we can easily test, see if it's a problem, and then either continue our work or roll it back to what it happened to be. So in this case, reseating the video adapter is a change. You're opening the system up, you're pulling out the video adapter, you're putting it back down again, and doing all of this, by the way, this takes time. And especially in my system, you got to get all the stuff off the desk. There's papers everywhere. They've got doodads all over the top of their computer because they need to make work a little more manageable in their life. So you get rid of all that stuff. You push it out of the way, and then you finally get access to the system and reset. This is 15 or 20 minutes have gone by when you could have just started in VGA mode to see if Windows is still working behind the scenes. See how quick and different that is? And by the way, starting in VGA mode doesn't change a configuration. It doesn't modify what's happening. So until you really understand where the root cause or potential root causes of the problem are, you should not really be making changes to your system. And that's why starting in VGA mode would be a great option here. That's also why you would not want to run SFC right away. That definitely would change your operating system, change core files of your operating system. Usually that's for the best, but you are making a change, and you shouldn't make changes until you really understand where the problem is. That's one of those where you're just throwing darts. I see people, technicians, they throw darts a lot. And you'll mention, you know, my screen went black. Oh, you need to reinstall Windows. Well, I haven't really told you what the deal is. The screen black. Oh, you need to run SFC. Oh, well, wait, hold on. I haven't really explained that when it went black, I saw a Windows logo. You need to update the BIOS. That's what we're just throwing darts. We're just guessing. A friend of mine updated their BIOS and it fixed their video problem. So therefore it must fix this problem too. Doesn't work that way. So VGA mode is a very generic format. In fact, most monitors, in fact, every monitor I've ever run into ever in the history of ever, past a certain date has always supported VGA mode for that reason, so that you can just start Windows up. It uses these generic drivers that really should work with every single monitor that's out there. So if the monitor is working, VGA mode should work as well. And you can try it on your own system right now. You can start your system, hit the F8 key, and start it in VGA mode just to see what it looks like. It's a mess when it does that, but it does start up. And it gives you at least access to the operating system, and that's what we're trying to do. You would not update the BIOS. Again, we're making a change, a dramatic change when you're updating the BIOS. You almost never need to update the BIOS. That's a bit of a controversy right now because Microsoft tends to push out BIOS updates with their monthly updates now these days. And people are saying, wait, that's not something that you commonly would happily have a system do, certainly not automatically. But they continue to be doing that. So I think that's one, at least from my perspective, that really makes a lot of good sense, is going through this list and knowing which one of these things would make a change. If it makes a change, that's not the first thing we should be doing. And then finally, reinstalling the boot partition, which I don't think the problem is with our boot partition, but it certainly could be because something happened after that Windows logo. But seeing the Windows logo makes me think that we're booting just fine. The reinstalling the boot partition is a change. Again, making some type of change to the system. So I think that's one where that's what you should do, is go through all of this and figure out which one would be the best next step. And most often it's something that would not make any type of configuration change or modification to the system. And that's, I think, why starting in VGA mode is a very good option for you and the best one you should have if everything goes black. Great Honor in the chat room, the $5 super chat. Thank you, Great Honor. Great Honor says, passed Core 2 on my first attempt the other week. Congratulations. Thanks for everything, Professor Messer and community. Good luck, you guys. That really tells a story right there. We have such a great community, not only in our live streams, but on our Discords. Absolutely go and talk to some of the people that have been through this, that are studying for this. They can give you tips. They can give you ideas. Obviously, they can't tell you anything about the exam because they signed a non-disclosure agreement. That is the candidate agreement when you start your exam. But it's very often a great way to get some feedback on maybe things that might be useful to study before walking into the room. So absolutely consider that as you're going through the process of studying for this exam. And thank you, Great Honor, for the $5 super chat. Let's do another multiple choice based question. I've got another one right here. We've already done some troubleshooting, so let's go through this question that asks, a server admin is building a series of scripts to run in Windows, Linux, and Mac OS. Which of the following would be the best choice for this task? Would it be a shell script, PowerShell, a batch file, Python, or VB script? A server admin is building a series of scripts to run in Windows, Linux, and Mac OS. Which of the following would be the best choice for this task? Would it be shell script, PowerShell, batch file, Python, VB script? It's got to be one of those, right? If you think you know the answer, please know answers in the chat room. Please know hints in the chat room. You want to go to that link that's on your page, professormesser.com/QA, and lock in your answer if you know what it is. It's a scripting question. You may notice on the 1002 exam and the 1102 exam that scripting is absolutely there as well. So there are things you need to know about scripting. You don't have to know how to script. You don't have to go through any of those and go through the process of scripting, but you do have to know what you would use, where you would use it, how you would use it, how it would be implemented. So the challenge, I think, if you go through any of this, is really going through and trying to find the best possible answer for what we're doing here. So see if you happen to know what this answer is. You can lock it in with that link on your screen, professormesser.com/QA. It's the best way to do it. If you're going to Discord and you're getting a link that says it's expired, it's not my link because my links don't expire. You go to professormesser.com/Discord and you can get right into the Discord. If you're not, then there's something going very wrong with your Discord is what's happening. So that's a good one. It is the Professor Messer Discord. It's my server, which is the one that's there just for everything that we do on the professormesser.com website. It's a great way to do it. And I'm always in there doing something. There's always some type of craziness going on. So we're happy to have you join us and get some Q&A in there. Let's see how you did with this question. A number of you have locked in your answers. Let's see how you did. The question asked, a server admin is building a series of scripts to run in Windows, Linux, and Mac OS. Which of the following would be the best choice for this task? Would it be shell script, PowerShell, batch file, Python, VB script? It's got to be one of those, right? Let's see how you answered. If we show the results, we're a little torn. We did get a majority, though. We got 51%. You now have a controlling interest in the corporation. 51% chose Python as the answer. 18% chose PowerShell. 14% said shell script. 9% said batch file, and 8% say VB script. It's the best way to do it. All 5 of those are real scripting languages. All 5 of those can be used in different operating systems to do different things, but only one of these can be used across different operating systems, scripting in different operating systems. And if you're dealing with Windows, Linux, and Mac OS, then you would need a scripting language that would work the same across all of them. And the best choice in this list is indeed Python. Python is more of a general purpose, but it does have some specialties about it. But it can be used in practically any operating system. It has appeal and functionality in practically anything that you might be running. It's incredibly useful to be able to run. Sorry, I got you on the wrong page there. And if you're trying to write a script that can be used in multiple operating systems, there's a Python interpreter for all of those different operating systems. It's a great type of scripting language to use. I often tell people if you want to have some skills to bring to the table on your resume, scripting skills are incredibly valuable, especially if you can show some practical use of them. If you want to just focus on one, you might want to focus on Python if you want something that's more broad and goes across different operating systems. If you're someone who is very centric to Windows or you'd like a job doing a lot of Windows automation, then you might want to choose PowerShell because PowerShell is specific to the Windows operating system. And that's why PowerShell is not the right answer here because we need the script to run in Windows, Linux, and Mac OS. PowerShell is not available in Linux. PowerShell is not available in Mac OS. So that is why the best choice here is indeed Python. Shell script is a scripting type that's commonly associated with Linux. It could be also associated with Mac OS, since both of those are Linux and Unix based. Shell scripts, what we call those scripts at the command line of those Linux and Mac OS operating systems, but we don't call those shell scripts in Windows. Oddly enough, in Windows, we call it a batch file, has a different name. Same thing, same type of concept, but it's a different name. So it would not be a shell script in Windows, it would be a batch file. But those are very comparable to each other. They're just in different operating systems. And VBScript, Visual Basic Scripting Language, is a Windows-specific scripting language, thankfully. So that's not the right answer either. The only one of these that works in all three of those different operating systems is indeed Python. Answer D, 52% of you chose Python. You got it absolutely right. You know, there might be an open source version of PowerShell for Linux and Mac. I don't know if that's a Microsoft published thing, but it certainly is not one that is included. And we were looking for the best choice for this task. I'm not sure I would trust PowerShell in Linux. That doesn't even make sense. PowerShell has all of these Windows hooks. It integrates with Active Directory. It integrates with the Windows services. It talks to the Windows operating system. It's a very powerful Windows scripting language. It's not something I'd put on Linux, even if I had the ability. And then now people are talking, well, you could emulate. You could run in Wine. You could get it running in an emulator. No, have you ever run anything in Wine? Not the best option either. And that the question was not which of the following could somehow manage to be configured in a way that might work in an operating system that you would use. Not the question. The question was, which of the following would be the best choice for this task? Clearly the best choice here would be Python. That would be the one you would use. This question, I think, really speaks to the broadness of CompTIA exams, because these are not exams that are single topic exams. They run across a very broad range of topics. For example, just my A+ course, we're talking about my 1001 and 1002 courses, consist of 137 videos. That's a lot of videos. And it's over 18 and a half hours or so that you would be watching just to get everything that's in these videos. Fortunately, I've created a set of notes for you that already contains everything from every single one of these videos. They are all in there. Let me show you what this looks like. This is my set of CompTIA A+, 220, 1002 course notes. There it is. This is the digital edition of the course notes. There's the index. So I have over 50 pages just for the 1002, and it has all the text, all the charts, all the important graphics, everything that's in there is the way to do it. There's not only physical or digital versions, there are also physical versions, not only for the 1002, but also, as you can see, brand new. In fact, it's a little glossier, isn't it? The new one is glossier. It's the 220 1102 course notes for the new series of exams. So it doesn't really matter which one you're studying for. We've got course notes for both of them. You'll find both the digital edition and physical editions available on my website. You can find out more by visiting professormesser.com/1002 notes, or follow the links in the menus that are available on the Professor Messer website. It's also a great way to help support the site. So thank you so much, all of you that have already purchased and taken advantage of these notes. Hopefully it's a win-win for all of us, because it's something that really can help you with your final studies on this exam, and something that might help you get a few extra points when you're sitting in that exam seat. For those of you in the chat room looking for the Discord link, you can join us on Discord at professormesser.com/Discord. As you might expect, the way you find anything on my website, you type in professormesser.com/YouTube/Instagram/Twitter/Discord. Just makes it easy, I think. Makes it easy for me. Not sure if it makes it that easy for you, but it sure makes it easy for me to remember these things. So that's a good way to do it. Or you can click the icons that are in the upper right of the Professor Messer website, not the CompTIA website, Professor Messer website. I have those there. Let's do another question, shall we? This next question asks, a web server administrator would like to view all IP addresses connecting to a server. Which of the following would provide this information? Would it be netstat, traceroute, nslookup, ipconfig, or ping? Almost removed this question but I thought it'd be interesting to see how we do. A web server administrator would like to view all IP addresses connecting to a server. Which of the following would provide this information? Is it netstat, traceroute, nslookup, ipconfig, or ping? If you think you know the answer, do not answer in the chat room. You want to answer right here at professormesser.com/QA to lock in your answer. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. We'll be able to get through all of this. Hopefully this is one that you're familiar with. There's a lot of command lines on this particular study group, and I've kind of been going through command lines right now. I'm working on the 1102 videos right now. The videos that I am shooting tomorrow are the Microsoft command line and network command line videos, among others. And it's a fun set of videos to do because there's actual demonstration and we can look at the screen and see what the commands do. It's a great one to step through. It's a popular set of videos for that reason. It was very popular in 1002. So I want to be sure we've got it updated for everything that's listed on the 1102. Hopefully we'll have those out sometime over the weekend or just after. But you probably have noticed on the website that the 1101 course is done. So all of the videos coming now are for the 1102, which fortunately is a little bit shorter. There are fewer videos in the 1102 than the 1101 for whatever reason. Who knows why they do that. Let's see how we do on this one. A question asked, a web server administrator would like to view all IP addresses connecting to a server. Which of the following would provide this information? And it's netstat, traceroute, nslookup, ipconfig, or ping. How did you do? Let's see how the results go. 70%, 70, say netstat is the right answer. 14% said ipconfig is the right answer. And then we have a tie for third between traceroute and nslookup with 6 and 7% apiece. And then 1%, hardly anybody, said ping. Poor ping. Ping doesn't have anybody answering there, only 1% of folks. So we're on this web server. We're the administrator of this web server, and we're thinking to ourselves, who's connecting to this web server right now? I would love to get a list of every IP address that's connecting to this web server right now. The best one to look at is netstat. The name itself kind of makes sense. It's network statistics to be able to do that. And if you wanted to view it in different ways, netstat is it's a big command with a lot of flags and a lot of options and a lot of ways to look at information. You'll notice we only go through a couple different options in our course because there's just too much that you would ever go through. But I would highly recommend, if you're someone who is going to be using these commands on Windows and Linux and Mac OS, and you want to be very familiar with the networking side of things, the more you know of netstat, the better things are going to be for you. So go through the netstat manual pages and have a look at what the different options are. If you want to show all active connections, netstat-A will show you that. That's probably what we would use to be able to list out all the IP addresses that are connecting to our device at any particular time. If you're in Windows, you can use the netstat-B, which not only shows you the IP address that people are connecting to, but what executable is servicing the connection that they are connecting to, or if this is outbound communication, which executable is sending that information outbound. So it works pretty good. And then lastly, if you ever run the netstat, you notice it does a name resolution and gives you a bunch of names instead of IP addresses. You might want to add on the -n to the command line, which means don't resolve a name. I don't want to see the names. I don't care about the names. I'm an IP address person. I need to see the IP addresses. And that way you could do maybe a netstat-A -n and hit enter and see how that works out, because you can combine these things together. Netstat is a very powerful tool. And as I mentioned, the more you know about netstat, the better of a network technician and troubleshooter you are going to be. And I think everybody who answered A, the 71% of you, already knew that. You knew netstat is really powerful and has good stuff inside. That's what we should use to find out all of the IP addresses connecting to a server. Now, for those of you in the chat room that said, but wait, I would use a different utility, or I would use the utility that's built into the web server to show me the list, those are absolutely valid answers if they were here, but they're not here. And the question very specifically says, which of the following would provide this information? So let me give you an example. I think sometimes this frustrates people because they will, in their mind, have a particular utility that they would like to use that they know is the most popular utility out there to do this type of thing. And that's what they use all the time. They use it at work. It's something that's very common. And why is it in this list of things? I think that should be the answer, and I'm frustrated that it isn't. But let's take this scenario, because every question is its own little world. We got to have to take each one on its own with only the information that it provides to us. Let's say that in this scenario, you don't have access to that utility. That access is for a different group, or they've removed access to that utility because of bugs or errors that they found. So that's why I often tell people you have to look at the question, which says which of the following, and then pick the best answer of what's provided, not the answer that you think in your mind should be on this list, because there are, I could think of 10 different utilities I can use right now to provide this functionality, but only one of them's listed in this list. And that's the real key, and I think the important knowledge jump you have to make when you're working with these, that you're taking each one of these as its own specific world, and you're evaluating only the information that's provided in the question and in the answers. It's an important part of the testing process. And I see people get frustrated because they think there should be another answer there. Well, there isn't. So you have to answer based on what's there. It's a very common form of testing and questions on these types of exams. If you are watching this video for continuing education unit credit, I would love to send you an email that certifies that you were here watching this video either live, or you could be watching this on a replay. If you would like to get one of those emails from me, you can go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website. There is a Contact Us link at the top or bottom of the site. Click that. It'll bring up a form. Put your name, put your email address, and in the subject line, please put June 2022 Core 2, and then the super secret code word of the month, which is NetStat. I'll just go with the number 1 here. NetStat is our super secret code word of the month. So again, for those of you that are working on this, put that into the subject line. You could also put it into the body of the message on a line by itself so that it's easy for me to see. And then if you'd like to put anything else in the body of that message, you're more than welcome to. I read through every single one of these. I'm not able to respond back to all of them because I get hundreds of these requests coming in during a single month. But I do read through every single one of them, and thank you for the comments that you put in there. So again, you go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website. You click the Contact Us link. You put in your name, your email address, and in the subject line, put June 2022 Core 2 A+, just so I know where it came from. And then put the super secret code word of the month, NetStat. NetStat is the super secret code word of the month. So lock that in, send me that note, and then it usually takes me about a week or so to get these back. Maybe I can get these done on the weekend. If you do need it faster than that, let me know. Maybe send me a separate note and let me say that, hey, I just sent in one of these CEUs, but I need it quickly because I'm trying to renew. I can turn it around really quick for you. So it's an easy way to do it. We'll make that happen. Let's do another question. We got time. There's still more to do here. Next question on our list asks this. This question says, a user's permissions have been set to the minimum rights required to complete their job function. Which of the following would describe this security method? Is that ACL, certificate-based authentication, least privilege, port security, or DLP? A user's permissions have been set to the minimum rights required to complete their job function. Which of the following would describe this security method? Is it ACL, certificate-based authentication, least privilege, port security, and DLP? It's got to be one of those, right? All of those are real things. They are all from your CompTIA exam objectives. If you don't recognize one of them, make a note to have in there and lock in your answer. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. Instead, you want to go to that link right there, professormesser.com/QA, and lock in your answer. Gotta think I know what this one might be. You may be able to even figure out the details here because there's abbreviations here. There's other terms you may not have run into, but you may be able to piece some of this together. Let's see how we do with this particular question. Lock it in at professormesser.com/QA. I'll have to figure out how we do with all of this. Whenever you get into these questions and you're working through questions like this, it helps if maybe there are some that you do recognize so that you can throw out these things that are obvious to you that either definitely shouldn't be in this question or could be a contender. You can start narrowing down your focus. So this could be a kind of a calculatus eliminatus kind of situation where you can get rid of some things that might help you really narrow down where the answer might be, or in any case, at least increase the odds that if you took a guess, you'd be guessing pretty well. Charm in the chat room with the $9.99 super chat who says, thank you for taking out time helping us. Well, this is the fun part. This is the part I like, is getting on the live streams and doing this Q&A. These are always fun. I wish I could do one of these every day. It would be phenomenal. Not that we haven't thought about maybe we could figure out how to do it every day, but it takes me about half a day to put together the questions. So there's a whole physics problem around trying to make that happen every day. But it's still a lot of fun, and we love doing it. So thank you, Charm. We sure appreciate not only the thanks that you give, but the support with the Super Chat. It really is very helpful, and thank you so much for your support. Well, this is one, if we go through the questions and figuring out how we work through these questions, this is a good example of one where you really do have to know these terms and what they do. That's why I often tell people, don't just memorize an abbreviation. You want to memorize more than just an abbreviation. You want to memorize what the abbreviation is and then what it does, how you would use it. So a few options are maybe available for you. Let's see how you did with this one. The question asked, a user's permissions have been set to the minimum rights required to complete their job function. Which of the following would describe this security method? 78% of you say it is least privilege. Least privilege is almost 80% of you. We seem very solid that seems to be what it is. We're going to find out if you're right in just a moment. ACL came in at 12%, so double digits. 7% said certificate-based authentication, a fantastic security method. 3% said DLP, maybe not so great security method. And 0%, nobody, said port security. Wouldn't it be interesting if port security came up to be the answer? I'm glad to show you that the answer is least privilege. Of course, it's least privilege. This is when the administrator is configuring access that is going to limit somebody only to what they need to do to get their job done. So if you're working in shipping and receiving, your job may be to print off the labels, stick them on a box, send out the shipment. Maybe what you do constantly all day, every day. So you need access to the database. You need access to be able to view people's addresses. You need access to be able to print things. Now, what if you have a manager of shipping and receiving who also has to take care of budgets? They're in charge of making sure that they keep their dollars in the right range for shipping and receiving. And so they might have additional access to the data that provides them with the shipping costs. The shipping costs may not be available to the people that are actually printing out the labels. So when you get to the management, they have a different least privilege. Their least privilege gets a little bit bigger, but they're only able to see shipping and receiving details. They would not be able to see information, for example, sent to IT because they're not in the IT department. So being able to limit the scope of what someone can do also limits how much damage can be done either by that user or by a malicious application, which is usually the much more common situation. If you limit the scope of what malware can do, then there's only so far and so much damage it can cause. So if we limit access, I think we're in pretty good shape there. I think we're much better off than if we did not limit the access. There are places I read through all the time where everybody gets administrator rights. And, well, we just give administrator rights to everybody. They can install whatever they want. I don't know why Windows locks this thing down. That's crazy. Everybody should be able to install and use whatever system they'd like to be. No, they shouldn't. That is just opening everything up for an enormous issue. And in fact, organizations like that, when they are hit with ransomware, the ransomware is easily able to copy itself to every other system in the place because that user had administrative rights. So always a bad idea to not have least privilege in place, and always a bad idea to make everybody an administrator. Just a bad idea. Bad. If that's happening in your organization, prepare. have lots of backups. We'll put it that way. If you're going to be a little fast and loose on that side, it's time to make sure you maybe some extra backups. Yeah, do a backup at night, maybe do an extra one and put it maybe off site because you're going to need it. Maybe not today, but you will need it. It's coming. It's happening. So definitely be aware of that. You do not want to be in that situation where you have problems just because you allowed somebody to have more rights than they should have. And this could have been blocked or stopped right on that system. Not something you want to have to deal with. These other answers here are interesting though. ACL, the control list that you would provide for access are commonly associated with routers, but ACL is more of a generic term. An access control list is something that's part of operating systems. It's certainly part of firewalls, part of routers, part of anything that has a list that provides access or denies access is an access control list. So in this case, we're not looking to put an access control list in place. In fact, I would hope that if they're already working on this network, there already is an access control list. Let's hope. Maybe it's one of those places. And then we have 7% that said certificate-based authentication, which, by the way, is a great way to authenticate. Certificate-based authentication means that we have a certificate, an asymmetric cryptography that is going to help us confirm that could only be that system because it has a certificate on it that verifies that it's a legit system. So fantastic way to do it through certificate-based authentication. There are many different ways to implement certificate-based authentication, but that is one that is a very powerful type of authentication method. But authentication method's not what we're looking for. We're looking for a way to limit someone's user permissions. Authentication either allows you access or doesn't. There's no nuance there. So certificate-based authentication would not be the right answer here. DLP, data loss prevention. DLP is a great way to look for things either on the network or in storage that could hold sensitive information because those things should either be encrypted or not stored there at all. So data loss prevention is always looking for those. And if it identifies somebody sending credit cards in the clear over the network, it can block them and not allow them to get out to the rest of the world. That's not what we were looking for. We were looking for a change to rights and permissions that would allow someone to perform their job. Data loss prevention does not do that. And the last one, port security. Nobody said port security, which certainly limits what someone is able to do on a system, on a physical interface. Port security in this place is referring to the physical interface of a switch port, not a TCP or UDP port. So port security means that someone couldn't show up at your desk, unplug your system, plug in their own system, and gain access to the network. We're preventing that from happening because we've configured port security on that switch. Again, that is not something that changes someone's rights and permissions to be able to do their job function. The answer here, the only one that makes sense. Answer C, least privilege. 79% of you got that one. Absolutely correct. That was the right answer. And if you answered C, least privilege, give yourself an extra point on the list. Well, we've gone through an hour of Q&A. I know. Can you believe it? All of these questions, by the way, we did today came directly from the CompTIA exam objectives. If you have not downloaded these objectives, you are doing yourself a grave disservice. There is an immense amount of information contained in these exam objectives. They are free. And they will tell you everything you need to know to pass this exam. This is when people ask me that question, hey, what things do I really need to know to pass my exam? You really need to know everything that's in these exam objectives. You can find them on the CompTIA website. Go to your favorite search engine, type in CompTIA exam objectives. We'll take you right to the page. Or I have a link on my site. Simply visit professormesser.com/objectives. Follow the link that's on that page to head over to the CompTIA website and download and use those objectives. They are very powerful. They're very useful. Don't miss that opportunity because this will help you as a final checklist when you're going through and you're deciding, do I know everything I need to know for this exam? You can check off everything on this list and really confirm in your mind, yes, I'm ready to take this exam. It's a great way to do it. For those of you that need just a little bit more Q&A, I know we did a lot of Q&A today, but if you would like a little bit more, a lot more actually, 380 pages worth with 390 question exams, these are my CompTIA practice exams. Now I'm throwing stuff on the floor. There's practice exams. There it is. So practice exams, it's a big book. You can see it's a nice big fat book that we would have here. This is the physical edition that I have in my hands. There's also a digital edition that you can see on the screen there. These digital editions are extremely useful because I built in some links in the digital edition that would help. Let's do a question from the digital edition. As a matter of fact, this one is question A6. It asks, a system administrator is installing a new server into the metal racks in a data center. During the installation process, the administrator can feel a faint tingling sensation when mounting the server. Which of the following safety systems should be tested and verified first? Should we look at test and verify equipment grounding, lighted exit signs, cable management, or waste disposal regulations? Now, if you're running a PDF viewer like I am here, my viewer has annotation capabilities, so you can annotate or mark on this page if you wanted to, or you don't have to. You can change these and remove them and do other things. Or you can, if you have it with a stylus, it's on a tablet, you can write on the page and make notes yourself. I've also put links into the PDF itself. So if you want to know the answer, you can go to a page that has all the answers on it. Kind of gives away everything when you do that. There's also the details on page 41. I could scroll through and go to page 41, or I can simply click where it says the details and go to page 41 to go through the answers that are there as well. If you're ever in the situation where you're trying to break out, get detailed answers for these, and the one thing that I do on these exams is I not only tell you the detailed answers, but I tell you the detailed bad answers. So you not only know where the good answers are, you know when you get it wrong, why you got it wrong. And I think that's the key part if anybody's going through this and trying to figure out, how do I know I answered it, but it's not the answer I thought it was. Why didn't I get it right? It's an opportunity. So if you go to the answer page, it tells you the answer is A, equipment grounding, and tells you why. But as I just mentioned, all the incorrect answers have the answer in there. So you can go to the incorrect answers and really write down what you think they are, really understand what the differences are. And there's a QR code that if you really didn't even understand the question, you can go back to the video and the QR code really helps a bit so you can know what that is. When you're done with that, you can click the back button. It will go back to the main page. You can start with the next question that's on your list. All comes back to you from the Core 2 practice exams. You can find out more about that. Go to my website, professormesser.com/core2pe. We do one of these study groups every month. We got another one coming up in July. July 12th and 14th are the next A+ study groups. We also have Network Plus and Security Plus study groups. We have 2 of those happening this month. So if you wanted to come back next Wednesday and the Wednesday after that, we have Network Plus and Security Plus. And of course, you can always go to the calendar that's on the Professor Messer website at professormesser.com/calendar. We'll tell you when the next live event happens to be. Well, although we're through the first hour, there's plenty more that we're going to be doing here. It's the after show where you ask me questions from the chat room. So this is a great place to stick around. We're not done yet. If you want to get more of those practice exams, you can find them on my website at professormesser.com/1002success. Don't forget about the vouchers that are available on my site. Do not pay full price for your vouchers. Get a discounted voucher at professormesser.com/vouchers. And of course, you can always follow us on the Twitter and the YouTube and the Instagram and other places by typing in professormesser.com/Twitter/YouTube/Instagram and find out where all of those might be as well. Well, thank you for being here in this first hour. We're going to transition over to the after show. Thank you for joining us. Hopefully you'll stick around because I'd love to get your questions from the chat room. And we thank you for being here in this first hour. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time on the A+ study group. All right, chat room. Let's see if I can get my Windows up and running here. That's not the right one. There we go. There I am. All right, chat room. Let's see how we are doing with this. I've got a lot to be able to get through here. I'm going to get things set up on my side so that I can get your questions answered, which means I need to change my media just a little bit. Just a second. We'll figure out where this is and where this comes from. I've got a lot of different chats to go through for this. I'm going to pop out the chat so that I can really see what's going on with this one. There we go. And then we will take questions in that chat. If you are, That's the wrong graphic. There it is. If you're on my website at professormesser.com/live, then you've got different options there available. So you can, of course, see that there is an embedded chat, which happens to be the same chat. So if you go to professormesser.com/live, it's the one that's on my website, which happens to be the same one that's on YouTube. So if you're on YouTube right now, it's that chat. So that's exactly where it should be if you're someone who's working through all of these. I think if you're someone that is really working on the A+, there's a number of questions that will come up. This is a great place to ask questions. So absolutely go through and see if you know, if you have something you'd like to talk about. It can be about A+, it can be about CompTIA exams in general, it can be about industry certifications, it could be about anything. It doesn't have to even stick with those either. So feel free to be able to step through that. Let's go through some of the questions that you have, and we'll just start jumping through them and going through the list of those. It's a great place to go if you're someone who's go to that chat room, and I'm watching as these go by and figuring out the details of this. First on the list, we have in the chat room, Grody says, a guy told me at work. Grody, is this you? Are you just saying I'm saying this, or is it really a friend says, if I got A+ and Network Plus, I should be able to troubleshoot switches and firewalls. What do you think? Well, I think you would have the foundation for learning the tools that you would need to troubleshoot switches and firewalls. But the A+ exam and the Network Plus exam do not focus on the troubleshooting of specific manufacturers, switches, or firewalls. But there are very fundamental troubleshooting steps that you will go through. For example, the troubleshooting step for networking in the A+, you start by pinging your local address, really by pinging loopback. Then you ping your local address. Then you ping your default gateway. Then you ping something beyond the default gateway. That's a very common troubleshooting step. In fact, it's one of the first things we do when we sit down at a system and somebody says, I'm having a hard time connecting to that server. Let's see where along the way we're running into a problem. That doesn't necessarily solve the issue, but it's a very powerful troubleshooting tool because we can start to see if the problem is on their local machine or if the problem happens to be with something else that's out on the network. And sometimes that's the best thing to start doing. We're taking the problem, we're cutting it in half. All right, now let's look at where we think the problem might be in that one half. Let's cut it in half again, and now look at it again. Probably one of the most fundamental troubleshooting tasks is cutting it in half and seeing on which side the problem still happens to be. We've been doing that, I don't know, since forever on our systems. It's just a very basic fundamental part of that. So I think you should partly be able to troubleshoot the operation of switches and firewalls, but to properly troubleshoot a switch, you really do need to understand the internals of the way that switch operates and perhaps even be at a command line of a switch. Firewalls is an even more extensive thing. In fact, troubleshooting a firewall most often really requires some very specific knowledge of an individual manufacturer's firewall. So there's some things that are generic that are important to know, but ultimately you may have to know how to log in and where to find things in this firewall, and it can be relatively complex. So I would not say that A+ and Network Plus give you everything you need to troubleshoot switches and firewalls, but it certainly puts you on the right path. And you will eventually get to training materials that will tell you even more, and you'll start to hear things. Well, first thing you need to know is how to ping. Oh, well, I know how to do that. I already gone through A+. I already know how to ping. I already know how to use netstat. I already know how to do a trace route. So some of those things will be automatic to you. Now you just need to know, how do I apply them? What do I ping? When I get a response, what does that mean? And that's really the important part. That's just more of that comes with time. More of that comes with the on-the-job training and things that you do. So pretty important. Another question in the chat room. I intend to write my 220-1001 exam online in September of 2022. Will I be able to write my A+ 220-1002 exam after retirement in October? No, it's been retired. Once an exam is retired, it is no longer available for you to take. Doesn't matter what you've passed what you've passed in the past is past. The exams that you have completed previously are no longer applicable. It has no effect on an exam that happens to be done. So that's why I tell people, make sure you get both exams done before they retire the series. Otherwise, you have to start all the way back over again. So if you think, as we sit here today, that there's just not enough time for you, that the 4.5 months or so before we get to the end of the A+ is just not enough time, then you should automatically be switching over to the 1100 series, where you have 3.5 years available to finish both exams. So I would highly recommend that you take some time and think about what you're doing and how long it's going to take. Look at a calendar, see if what makes sense to you, and then make your own decisions. I will also tell you, there will be people taking these exams on the last day they are offered. This is just a normal, I think it's more of a human thing. We just wait until the last minute and then suddenly, oh, I got to take this exam. So that's what people run into. They're like, oh, I've been studying for months. I better take this before it disappears. And they push. And some of them do great and pass on that final day. I get those emails. Some of them don't pass on that final day. I get those emails too. So I would recommend that you get them done as quickly as possible if you're working on the 1000 series. But I'll also tell you that if you're one of those folks that goes all the way to the end on October 20th and you just aren't able to complete both exams, it's not even close to being the end of the world. The difference of new material on the 1101 is 30% of the material is new. On the 1102, 40%, a little more, 40% you will have to learn new if you move from one to the other. So it's not insurmountable. You don't have to now start from the very beginning. You start from 60 or 70% already knowing this content. I think that's useful. I think that helps. So if it's not the end of the world, but if you make a goal and you're just not able to make it happen, that's okay. Just readjust. You just bring it back in. And I like the way the chat room thinks. It's just some extra learning you did, some extra things. You'll be able to use them in your career. They will come up, but it's one of those where ultimately you have to get the certification. So that's why I always say that's what you should do. So be sure you're familiar with all of the options you have and how much time is left. That's going to be important. Now, if you come to the Professor Messer website, there's an entire course now available for the 1101. This is a course, by the way, that was introduced just over a month ago. So it's brand new in the world of our certifications, and it takes time for study materials to be released. Usually takes about 3 months before you get a good selection available. In fact, if you go to Amazon right now, you'll see there's not a lot of 1100 books out there. There's very few choices available to you. That's normal. That's just the way this transition process normally works. But if we were to come back here in 2 months, there'll be plenty of things available. So that's why I tell you, don't worry too much about that. By the time you get to study for the 1102, there will be plenty of 1102 materials available for you. Now, is this enough time between now and October 20th as we sit here in June? You know, July, August, September, October, you've got just over 4 months, 4 months and 10 days or so. When you get to that point, that's a pretty good amount of time. But for some people, they can sit down and take these exams in 2 months and they're done because they have some knowledge of things they've done in the past. Maybe they have some industry experience. Maybe they've taken exams like this before. It's just a normal thing for them. They can get through it in a couple months and they're done. Other people, like me, I take 6 months for these things. I got stuff going on. I got life happening behind me. So I often think, this is going to take me 6 months to get through this. If that's you, then you might want to already think, I should probably take the 1101 and 1102 instead of the 1001, 1002. So that's the decision you need to make. You need to balance that out. And for those of you in the chat room that are happily saying, well, I have no life. So yeah, 4 months is fine. It works out, doesn't it? There's always a means to the end. And maybe the means here is getting that job and then suddenly having this life certainly is going to add to it. So this is one where you have to make those decisions, though. So sometimes I have these moments where there's not an active course going on. There's not an active set of books that need to be written. It's been years since this has happened. But there are times in this rotation of things that I'm creating where I don't have to create anything at that very moment. And if that's the case, maybe I can cram it into 4 months. So it will depend on what's going on in your world and how you feel about the topics and the content and how comfortable you are with cramming all of that in there and then somehow passing an exam based on that. I also get a little worked up over deadlines. I don't like deadlines. Deadlines are a necessary evil. I get it. There's certain things you can't pass on. In the United States, April the 15th is April the 15th. You can't get away from certain deadlines. But most deadlines in business, quite honestly, are completely arbitrary, it seems. It's one of those where sometimes people just set a date because it sounded like a good date. I've been on many projects with project plans where the project manager handed me the project and I said, you set a switch installation for 4 days from now. Why did you choose that? Because it takes a little longer to order a switch, get change control, configure the switch, install it. All of those things happen. And I go, well, 4 days seemed right. It seemed like a good number, so we're going to go with that. That's the type of arbitrary dates that I can't stand. But October 20th, another date that is not arbitrary. You have to work towards October 20th. But you need to figure out which one makes sense for you. Can you do it in that amount of time? It's one of those things. See what makes sense for you. You may be able to come up with one that makes better sense, or one that makes what somebody else wants you to do may be different than what you're comfortable in doing. So you've got choices there that you can work through as well. So that's it. It's October the 20th. And I will tell you, somebody brought this up earlier, the dates for retirement changed over time. And it changed because, well, a number of different things, but mostly because of delays associated with the situation going on in the world. When the current 1000 series exams were released, there at that point was no global pandemic that shut everything down. So everything got pushed a little bit. Where we thought the delay was going to be, where we thought the retirement was going to be, got pushed even further out. And I think it was great that when CompTIA finally said, we're releasing this on October 20th, they said, you know what, we're going to push this and give you a full 6 months that you can use as an overlap, which I thought was fantastic because there were other dates they announced tentatively that were closer up. So I like that we have a little bit more time. So they gave you a little bonus there. You do have a little more time than what you had originally. So I will highly recommend that you go through those and become more familiar with what the different options are. So that's important. It's always about timing, isn't it? So that's it. Other questions in the website. Can I take the CompTIA exam, I guess, before the 4 months are up and then take A+ next year around January? Or can I take both of them in January? You can, but you must take the 1101 and 1102. You cannot take the 1001 and 1002 because those retire in October, and you don't want to take one and not be able to take the second one before the series is retired because you have to start all the way over again. So if you're planning to take these in January or anytime after October, your study materials, I'm going to grab these so just to make a point. So this is my 220 1102 Core 2 course notes. You can see it right there, 1102, or excuse me, 1002. The 220 1002 course notes. This is the one for the exam that was released in 2019. This is the one that retires on October the 20th, the 1002. That means if you're planning to take this after October 20th, your study materials should be for the 1101 and 1102. And if they don't say 1101 and 1102, you have the wrong materials. Never study from this book if you're taking this exam. Never study from this book if you're taking this exam. You are setting yourself up for problem. You're not learning the things you need to learn. You're not going to know the things you need to know when you walk into that exam. Make sure your study materials match the version of the exam you're planning to take. Make sure your study materials match the version of the exam you're planning to take. Make sure your study materials match the version of the exam you're planning to take. For whatever reason. You have to make sure those do that. That's an important piece of this. Really important. So Amos in the chat room gets where I'm coming from. Amos says he's He's a guy. He's a 46-year-old person who says got life, full-time job. There's kids. There's a wife. There's a dog. There's a lot going on. Not going to make it in October is what he's saying. Like, October's not working for me. No problem. We got you. I got you. 1101, 1102. That's what you should go with. See how easy that was? Now you got 3.5 years. You can just squeak it in there because you know your wife's going to get another dog. It's just going to get harder. It doesn't get easier. It's just going to get more challenging. So that's why. Pick the right one for you. It's going to make sense. And you have options. This is what I like about the A+, is Amos says, no more dogs, please. I got 2 and there's another one coming, brother. So I feel you. This is one where I like the way CompTIA does this because there's this overlap period. Right now, you can take either one. So that means you're not cut off if you've been studying. You don't have to worry about suddenly an exam disappearing one day that you've been studying months for. You've got a ramp. You've got a warning time. This is your 2-minute warning. This is your 6-month warning that you need to hurry it up and get this done because it's going away. So you've got some options there. Which is harder? Oh, this is a good question. I hate saying that. I hate that term where people go, that's a good question. This is a good question, though. Which is harder, 1002 or 1102? Well, if you can see here, they're almost identical. Well, the cover is. And interestingly enough, the content is almost identical as well. The content that's in these is structured the same. It's the same domains with the same general selections inside of it. What's different, though, is the individual objectives that you need to know. There's minor differences and some new things. Not a lot that's brand new, but some things are new. For example, on the 1102, there's an entire section of the last domain that tests you on how well you do with help desk software so that you know the process. When someone calls into the help desk, what is the process? What will you be expected to know on your first day of help desk? I like that they added that because now you can really understand, oh, that's what help desk software looks like. This is how you would use it. This is what you can expect it to do. This is what value it brings to the organization. This is how you can track things over time. I think that's great. That's a nice addition that's not in the 11.0 in the 10.02. It's in the 11.02. What's interesting, though, is I don't find the topics to be more difficult or more challenging. So I would say from a difficulty level, both exams are pretty much the same difficulty. I don't think you will find one to be more easy or more hard than the other. There will be other people you see on the internet that will tout that they know what CompTIA does with the exams, and they know on these exams that are getting phased out, turns out CompTIA makes them harder. Nobody knows that. CompTIA certainly doesn't share it with anybody. I think people would like to believe that's what happens, but that's not. Nobody. In fact, this has been posited before, and after asking some folks, how'd you do on this exam? What results did you get on the exam? What do you feel? How'd you feel it went? Turns out it was exactly the same exam that's always been. Turns out they didn't make it harder than the other exam. It turns out it's exactly the same as it's always been, which is pretty much what we'd expect. Why would CompTIA spend time tweaking an exam that's about to be retired in a matter of months? They're not going to waste their time with that. They're spending all of their resources on the new materials and the new exams. So that's the key. They don't make it harder for you because an exam is being phased out. In fact, that would be remarkably unfair to the people that have been properly studying for the existing exam. So why would they do that? Of course they wouldn't do that. It just when you say it out loud, it sounds silly. Like, what did the person who say that actually think? Did they hear themselves when they were saying that? Because that's not even close to being fair for anyone trying to do that. So that's the key. Is have a look at the newer exam if you're that person. You say you're not getting a new dog, but I talked to the wife. She says you're getting a new dog. You may want to talk to her, Amos. I'm just saying. Maybe I'm thinking about my wife now that I'm thinking about that. That's Mrs. Professor Messer. She's already got the dog picked out. She's already got a name. That's when it's over. That's when you know. That's when you know it's It's trouble. So soon, I think at the beginning of next month, Teddy is coming to our house to live with us. And so I'll have the new dog. So I got this one, Amos. I got you on this one. I got this one covered, but you got to get the next one. That's all I'm saying. Because there will be a next. Of course, there's going to be a next one for that. Another question. If you buy a voucher from CompTIA for 1001, can you use it for 1101? Well, first you're buying the voucher from the Professor Messer website, not from CompTIA, of course, but maybe you're outside the U.S. I'll give you that one. But here's the thing. I'm going to go to the CompTIA website so you can see this. Where can I bring this up in? Let me bring it up in a browser that does not have any of my previous stuff in it so that you can really get a good feel for this particular issue. So I'm going to go to the CompTIA store. That's where you would buy the vouchers at CompTIA. Yes. Nope. I don't want to add. This is not Chrome, so don't add an extension. What is going on? Let me bring up. I will bring up Chrome. Thank you for asking. Let's go to the store at CompTIA. Let me make sure I am not logged in so we can get some of that on the screen. Let's bring this over. Let's make this view different. I wasn't planning to do this, so I apologize for having all of this here. But I wanted to show you, let's just look at A+, because I think this is a good one to look at. So this is the A+ site on the CompTIA store, just so you have a perspective of where I am. This is at store.comptia.org. Now, if you go to the store, they have two vouchers listed for A+. They have one that is the 1101 or 1102, just so you can see that. They have another voucher here that's for the 1001 or 1002. And then you would choose which voucher you would like, and you can purchase that. Now, of course, you're doing this from the Professor Messer website. If you're in the US and Canada, you're not at this website. But what's interesting about this is both of these vouchers are identical. They're identical. They're the same. So even though they say this is an 1101 or 1102 voucher, and they say this is a 1001 or 1002 voucher, it's an A+ voucher. It's the same voucher. In fact, if you buy them from my site, I'm sending you just this one all the time. I'm just sending you this one voucher because they're identical. They're the same. If somebody hands you an 1101 voucher that is also an 1102 voucher, it's also a 1001 voucher, it's also a 1002 voucher. It's the same voucher. It's an A+ voucher. So, and Jay says, yep, you're right. I'm in the UK. So in the UK, you would go to this CompTIA store, and it doesn't matter which one you buy. They're both the same. So if, let's say you're thinking, I am going to take this exam before the October cutoff. I'm going to buy a 1001 and a 1002 voucher. And you buy it, and I send you two vouchers. Then October gets here and you think, you know what? I haven't actually studied. The vouchers are good for a year, but I've not studied for the 1001 or 1002. And now the deadline's here. What am I going to do? I should rush and hurry and go. No. That same voucher, as long as you haven't used the voucher yet, as long as you have not booked your exam, you can simply decide to take the 1101 and 1102 and use exactly the same vouchers. So they can be used for either exam. You can swap them in and swap them out. The only difference is once you book your exam, once you use the voucher, you're locked into that version of the exam. I have heard situations where someone was able to contact CompTIA and have them change it over to a different version of the exam because they had not taken their exam yet. That is not a guarantee. They do not say that you can do that. In fact, they say exactly the opposite, that once you lock it into that version of the exam, that's the one you have to take. But I like that they, in some cases, have been able to fix some of these problems. Question then becomes, as people have mentioned in the chat room, well, why are there two options? If these are different exams or different vouchers, why are they split into two different ones? I don't know. Maybe because they think people are looking for a particular version that they're taking and therefore they pick that one. I don't know, but they're the same. I've literally provided people with thousands of vouchers on my website. They come and they purchase the voucher, and I send them that voucher. And I can tell you they're identical. They're exactly the same. There's no difference between the two. So I don't know why they put them that way. Maybe just to make sure people know what they are buying. I don't know. But the flexibility that you have is already built into the voucher. So that's great. So that's good. So you've got that. You've at least got that option. It's there. Also on the website, or also in the chat room, another question. I also offer on my web, professormesser.com, I offer the official CompTIA PDF books on my homepage, along with my notes. Are the official books a good add-on to learn? Or are they not really that beneficial? Well, let's have a look at them. I'll give you my perspective of this. I'm going to go to my 1101, 1102 study resources page on my website. All of these resources are available in the pull-down menus. I have Network Plus study resources, A+, 1101, 1102 study resources, 1001, 1002 study resources. They're all out there. And of course, my own products are listed here, but I also have, being a CompTIA partner, I have the option to provide you with CompTIA products. And if the CompTIA books are something you're interested in, I also offer, because I don't write my own book, I offer CompTIA books on my website too. And because I'm doing it on my website, when you buy the CompTIA books on my site, you get my course notes for free. So that's kind of nice. But the question here is, are these books any good? First, I'll give you my particular impression of what I put on my site, or why I choose the things I choose to put on my site. I don't put anything out here that I would offer to you that I would not use myself. And in some cases, I know even a little more about the products than what you can see on the screen. For example, these books that are written by people that I've already worked with in the industry for years. The authors of these books are people that I've worked with extensively, going back to the days, for those of you that have been around for a while, to the days of GTS Learning. GTS Learning was acquired by CompTIA a number of years ago. And the same people that were writing the books then, that I was telling you, these books are amazing, you should get these great GTS Learning books. Turns out this is the same book. It just now has CompTIA on the front of it. And that's why I put this on my site, because I know the people writing these books write good books, and I've bought these books myself. So if I have not gone through it, I'm not going to have you go through it. Same thing for things like the labs. If you look at the labs on my site, so the interactive labs, CompTIA's got these crazy 3D labs now where you're in a 3D environment and floating around and zooming in and zooming out and moving things on the screen like it's a first-person shooter, except it's a first-person certification training. That's part of the labs that they have there. And that's all on their website. And again, if you get the labs, you get other things. Look at all the labs that come with this. And I'm putting my course notes on with that one as well. So you can go to the CompTIA website and get the labs. And but it doesn't come with my course notes if you buy it from CompTIA. Only has the combo here if you get it on the Professor Messer website. But I use these labs. In fact, I really like the new CompTIA labs. If you've not tried these are remarkable. I've got to make a video of the Core 1 because it's just so much fun to be in this 3D world and working with these, or being at the command line for the 1102. You're working with Windows. You're in Windows Server. You're troubleshooting a blue screen problem that pops up. You know, all the labs are there. So it does have a lot of flexibility. I would not have offered it to you when I got into these labs, and I've used probably every set of labs that are published, that have been published in the last 10 years. I've used every set of labs on the market. You can name a manufacturer, I've used their labs. You can use one from Pearson, I've used their labs. From Practice Labs, I've used their labs. From the old CompTIA, which was Practice Labs, I used their labs. So these are new though. These are not Practice Labs. These are CompTIA's own labs that they've done, and they've taken it another step higher. They've made it more integrated. They've added more specific exam objectives, and it's a fantastic environment to work in. You know, a lot of times they ask you to type things in. It says type the word trace route with all these things, and you could type that in yourself, but if you already know how to type that in, they have a button you can click that just types it in for you. Things like that help you make your own decisions about how much you would like to interact or type or do things with these labs. Really great. Really fantastic. Just another example. So I don't put these out there. They're practice tests. their interactive labs, the ebook, all of this that's there, I would not put there unless I thought it was valuable. And so it is subjective. It is my own opinion towards the functionality of these training materials. But at least I put some of this out there, and I have videos that I made for the Security and the Network Plus. If you go over to the Security Plus study recommendations and you wanted to get a feel for what do the labs do for me, I've got a little video you can watch that breaks down all of it so that you can even see the labs and see what I do in the labs. Can't really see me right there with the big head, but I'm stepping through in this demonstration video. Let me jump ahead so you can see I'm logging into Windows. I'm clicking, it's logging, it's doing things. So you've got a full Windows environment to work with. This is almost identical to the 221,000 or 1102 labs. Just good stuff to be able to work through. I think if you're someone who needs that extra hands-on and you don't have virtualization system, or you don't want to set it up, or you don't want to have to go through the process of building your own operating system, these labs are remarkable and they work so extremely well. And that's why they're on my website. So I sort of answered a couple of different answers there to a question maybe you didn't ask, but I don't add them to my site unless I have personally used them. I've learned everything I can about them, and in some cases work directly with CompTIA to say, here's what I like, here's what we're doing with them and how we can use them. So that's kind of nice to be able to at least have the option. I don't have labs that I create. The process of creating labs is relatively complex. It's a virtualized environment. It's you're not on a rail. You can decide what to do and when to do it. So I think that's the one that kind of makes sense to me, is only putting things on my site that I know I can justify to you. Otherwise, forget it. I'm not going to. I have people, trust me, I have people send me emails every day. Oh, please put this on your site. Please add this ad to your videos. Please, let's partner together. And it's just things you would never want. So that's why you don't see VPN ads. You don't see me touting some mobile game. Like, what does that have to do with anything? That doesn't help anybody get their certification. And our goal here is to get you the cert. I'm not going to do that. So there's just certain lines. This isn't that kind of channel. It's not what we do. So makes sense, but it gives you some options and things you can do with it. That's where that comes from and why I work through that. Along those same lines, Big Sexy in the chat room says, if I just watch your videos and get your course notes books, is that enough? Are we good? Is that it? Well, it might be if you already have a good familiarity of the content. You've already been in the industry for a while. But I always tell people you need 4 things. You need a good book. Books can provide you with a detailed amount of information that you simply cannot get from a video. The videos are presented in a certain way. Books are presented in a certain way, and both have their advantages and disadvantages. Books have a huge amount of information that you can take with you and have access to at any particular time, but they can't demonstrate something to you very easily. So books kind of fall off a little bit right there. A video series can demonstrate and give you information in a certain way, but a way to get across in video is not the same density of information as you would have in a book. Books are very dense with information. A single paragraph in a book can give you 5 different things that you need to know. And you can read that in about 30 seconds. But in a video, it takes time for me to talk about the topic, to lead you into the topic, how this particular topic is used, how this particular thing operates, maybe give you a demonstration of the thing. So it's a longer process when it's a video, but that's normal. That's why video does what it does, and it does it very well. The third is to get lots of hands-on. Get as much hands-on as you can, because the way that you would finally sort of burn these ideas into your brain to get those synapses firing is for you to have some muscle memory behind them. Run the ping command on your front end so that you can run the ping. You see the ping running on your system. You see the results and the output created from that command. And it's different when you do it than watching someone else do it. So there's benefits in both places. That's why we go over to Twitch. We watch people play the game, but then we also like to play the game. But there's benefits in watching someone else do it as well. So it depends on on how you like to do that. And lastly, plenty of Q&A. Lots of questions, lots of answers. Test yourself, see if you really remember it, and try to get Q&A that is specifically written in the same style and form as the CompTIA exam. I wonder where you could get something like that. That's where you can get it. That's why I created that book, because I went out to the internet to try to find Q&A, and what I found was a disaster. Most of the internet is awful with Q&A. There are so many bad Q&A sources out on the internet, to the point that at least every day someone sends me an email that says, I saw this question on the internet. This doesn't look right. That's right, because it's a question you got on the internet. It doesn't look right. And we're not gonna try to figure out how to make the bad questions right, or how to make them better. Go back to the original author of that question and ask them why this question is so bad. We're not going to do that work for them, especially when we've already got good questions available for you that we've worked really hard on. So that's what I recommend. So it's more than just watching videos and looking at course notes. I will tell you, there are no shortcuts. You cannot just do one thing and you're done. Just watch the videos, right? I'm good. Whenever you're trying to figure that out, and everything I just said, by the way, is in the first video of the series. So if you go to a video series that has, for instance, the A+, the first video of the A+ series is how to study or earn your 221,001 and 221,002, or 1101 and 1102. For Network Plus, how to earn your Network Plus certification, how to earn your Security Plus certification. And I tell you in that video, go get those 4 things. So I'm even telling you right off the bat, you can't just watch videos and expect to have the best possible outcome. Now, I will also tell you, there are people that are already familiar with these topics. They've been in the industry for a while. They've told me, they've sent me emails, hey, I just passed my exam. All I did was watch your videos. So that they are designed to be a single source of content, but you're limiting yourself, and you're kind of playing the odds. Your odds will do better if you get a book, if you get Q&A, if you get labs. But you can get away with it maybe if you do some extra work, really watching the videos, or taking your own notes, or going through the course notes, or whatever it happens to be. So that's why I tell people, make sure you are very familiar with these exam objectives, that you go through them and look at them from different sides, that you try it out yourself, that you do your own labs, that you read stuff in a book. That's the Make sure you're familiar with all of those. Charm in the chat room with the $1.99 super chat. The second time through, isn't it, Charm? That's your second super chat of the session. What are you doing? Charm says, Core 1101, the one I want, I should have waited. Well, there's a couple of things you can think about. If you just got the 1001 on my site, and you've got the older study materials, there is an upgrade path. So if you suddenly realize, I bought this months ago, but really I'm going to have to change, you don't have to repurchase everything at the same cost. There is an upgrade cost that greatly limits how much you would have to pay to get newer materials. Because I think you should be able to easily upgrade without having to repurchase everything, at least for my content, my products. The other option there, and you can send me a message or open a ticket if you are talking about my products. Let me know what's going on, and we'll figure out what we may be able to do for you. I can at least give you upgrade options, or figure out what makes more sense. It depends on what products you have. If you've purchased physical products, you may have to get more physical products. You may have to get another book. If it's digital, we have some other options available. So just let me know. Open a ticket, and we'll be glad to step through all of that. Yes, well, Big Sexy in the chat room says, love you said my name. Well, why wouldn't you? Because that's all good. I think I'm switching to all your content for my search. Thanks to the people in the chat for the responses. Use as much as you can. I encourage people to look through everything I've created, because I spend a lot of time creating what I feel is, and all of us here, creating the highest quality study materials possible. But I recognize there are other options out there and other things people might want to use. You should use whatever you feel is appropriate for you. Find the study materials that work best for you. Some people don't like my style. which is perfectly reasonable. The internet's a big place. I'm not going to be able to provide 100% of everything to 100% of everyone. But I try to make it in a format that fits that sweet spot where you just need what you need. You need exactly the type of information that's going to get you to pass the exam, and then you're off to getting that certification and you go to the next thing. I get it. And that's why you will find in my videos, my practice exams don't ask you questions from older versions of the exam. Why would it? Older versions of the exam are not going to be on your exam. The latest version of the exam is going to be on your exam. So you need to make sure all those study materials match, and they need to be very accurate towards what you are doing, which version you are taking. That's one thing that I think is difficult for me to see in the industry as a publisher, is that someone will be offering a set of practice questions that are just enormous. But what they don't tell you is that half of them are for a previous version, which are giving you questions that don't apply to what you're doing. They just sort of add on to it. Say, wow, we got a lot now. Yeah, but only half of them really apply to the current exam. That's why you'll notice I update my practice exams, and these will be updated too to the 1101 and 1102 in the coming months, is that I update my practice exams to get rid of anything that you will never be asked on the exam. They are specific to the exam objectives, to the point that the QR code that takes you to the video is for the video for the current exam that you're studying for. I can't stress enough how important that is for your studies, that you have the right materials. You don't want to be surprised when you walk in the door of the exam and suddenly they're asking you about, this thing is asking me about running a help desk. How am I supposed to know that? Well, you're supposed to know that because it was in the exam objectives, but your study materials were for the old version. So there's a good example of where this could really run into a problem. So that's what I recommend, is always checking to make sure that, and I get it, there's a cost associated with this. When you buy a book, a set of course notes, practice exams, or whatever it is, there's money that has to go out for this because somebody spent time to create that content. And now I get it. If you change, or you're now modifying your plans to go to a different set of exams, now there's another cost associated with it. So I realize that there is a good reason to push yourself for October the 20th. There's also, at least from my perspective, a way that you can upgrade without having to just repurchase everything. So, and I would be remiss if I did not mention Big Sexy in the chat room with the $4.99 super chat. Big Sexy says thank you, and I say thank you right back. Big Sexy, thank you so much for the questions and for the super chat. Every bit of that goes back to keeping these lights on and keeping this crazy experiment going. It escaped the lab and now it's out, and we're just going to keep this going as long as we can because it's just so much fun. This is what we should do. Everybody gets certification, and ultimately, as I've often said, our mission statement, as badly as I hate that term, our mission statement that we have here is for you to get a job or you to get a better job. That's it. That's all we're trying to do here. That's what we want out of this experience, whatever this is. Everybody works today. It's like Dave. Everybody's got a job. That's what we're trying to do. Except I don't plan on pretending to be the president. That's the only difference, really. Otherwise, Sigourney Weaver's here. She's my fake wife. The whole thing. It's all the same. It's all the same as Dave. It's just one of those where you really do have to think about what you're going to do and your strategy, and make sure you have a good one. Just plan it out, and I think you'll do fine. As long as you have a plan, I think that's the real goal. And timing right now is the issue. If you're trying to figure it out, bring up the calendar, mark when October the 20th is going to be, and start working your way back. See if you can figure out a way to make it work for you. I think it'd be good. Right now, as we sit here in June, there are many, many, many more study materials available for the 1002 than the 1102. So if you are in a hurry and you want to get this done quickly, the 1001, 1002 is probably your best bet. There's just so many more study materials out there that it just makes sense. So feel free. Have a look at that. Other questions from the chat room. Let me scroll up a bit and see what other questions. This is a good kind of generic question that came in, which was, how much does the A+ certification help in getting a help desk job? How much does it really help? getting a help desk job? How would you be able to tell? What would you do to be able to qualify that? I think this is a point that, or a question that kind of needs to be answered before you start your studies. But if it hasn't been answered already, I totally get it. What you want to do is go out to your favorite job posting website. So go out to LinkedIn Jobs, to Dice.com, to ZipRecruiter, to whatever it is in your particular country. Go to that website and look for entry-level help desk jobs, or entry-level IT jobs. Look for IT introductory or intro jobs, and maybe even look for help desk jobs in that particular search engine. What you're looking for is to see what do they want to have from you. They know this is an entry-level job. Employers are expecting you to have very little practical experience, but they're going to ask for something. They're going to ask for a certification, a certain knowledge level, a familiarity with a particular application or help desk software or Windows or Linux or Mac OS or something. Probably want you to be familiar with Microsoft 365. Maybe there's an emphasis in a particular switch manufacturer. It just depends on the employer. But I think you should go out there and see what people are asking for. This is a method, a technique I mentioned in my video, How to Get a Job in IT with No Experience. Because I mentioned 4 different elements you need to bring to the table. You need to bring a formal education, a set of industry certifications, some practical experience, and then you need to find somebody who already works there to be your friend and to be familiar with what they do there, who can vouch for you if you want to put in a job posting there. Those 4 elements are so important. And I mentioned in that video, there's a link to this video in the YouTube video description. If you ever wanted to go through it, it's a 30-minute video. So it's kind of a longer video in the world of YouTube. You know, there's the YouTube videos in fact, YouTube's trying to get it down to a minute. You know, they do the shorts now on YouTube. They understand this is short attention span theater that people watch for this amount of time. But the people coming to my channel tend to watch for much, much longer because we're trying to earn a certification. There's a method to our madness. And one of the things that I tell people to do is go watch that video because I give an explanation of creating a spreadsheet, listing out all the jobs in your area and listing out all of these requirements so that once you're done going through 10 or 20 of these jobs, you can kind of take a step back and have a look. What are people really asking for in my area? Are a lot of these asking for an A+? Are none of them asking for an A+? If you're doing this from Virginia or Maryland or DC, you might have all of these jobs asking you for a security plus and none of them asking you for an A+. So it often depends not only on the job, but it also depends on your geography and where you happen to be. And it differs depending on where you are in the country, and it differs depending on where you are in the world. So make sure you're familiar with what employers would like you to have, because often that should direct you. If every employer is telling you you don't need A+, but you absolutely need Security Plus, then you should be taking the Security Plus exam. See how that works? So a lot of times people will come to me and they'll ask me, they'll say, hey, I just finished my A+, my Network Plus, and my Security Plus. What do I take next? I don't know. What do employers want you to have? What do you want to do with your career? These are all, none of these questions I can answer. I don't have the answer to that. The question is really about you and the employers and what they're looking for. So that's why I tell people that's the case. So to that point in the chat room, 2 people have already mentioned, but wait, I'm in Virginia, I'm in Maryland, I'm taking the A+. Is that a mistake? I don't know. It might not be, but what do employers want you to have? What do entry-level positions that you would be qualified for, what are they asking for? So you need to find out. I would bet probably in your area, the majority of those are probably asking for Security Plus, just of what I have seen from the positions that are in Maryland and Virginia. But that's not 100%. That's only a portion of the available jobs in that area. So make sure you do what I just said. The only way to know if what you're doing is the right thing is to understand what the means to this end are going to provide. There's got to be an end to this. So the means is the A plus. What is the end? I want to get that job. All right. Do they want you to have an A plus? Go find out. You may find out that everybody wants an A plus in Maryland. Maybe I'm wrong. Or you may find that none of them do. Or maybe it's a mix. Or maybe it's only non-governmental jobs want A plus and governmental jobs want security plus. So it just depends. It's going to depend on where you are, what you want to do, who you want to work with. That's the key. It's not about me and it's not about you. It's really about the employer and what they're asking for. So that's the important part. So don't worry, you may be right on track. You may be taking the A plus. This is where you want to start. A plus is a fantastic foundation to use when you move into other certifications like Network Plus and Security Plus. So that's why I often tell people, go have a look, see what people are asking for. It's going to make a difference throughout your career when you do that, because now you can start positioning yourself into the right niche with the right companies doing the right thing. And you'll start to see trends. You know, the trend we've seen over the last couple of years is more of a move towards automation, specifically cloud-based automation, but really automation in general. And it seems to be I say a push. It's really a push from the employer. We've been doing automation in IT forever. I've been doing automation in IT from the early days of, well, IT. The idea of doing things automatically just makes sense. I'm lazy. I don't want to have to do this over and over. Doing repeatedly the same thing constantly is boring. Why don't I have the computer do that for me? And so knowing PowerShell, knowing Python are two very valuable skills. And if you have any chance and you want to maybe show somebody you have some additional skills you can bring to the table, those are really good skills. Not only for getting your job, but those are two skills I guarantee you will use for the rest of your career. That's how valuable those scripting skills are. Now, when I started in IT, there was no Python and there was no PowerShell. Okay? There was barely computers. They were made out of stone. We would use, no, they weren't quite that old. They were sort of that old. They were as heavy as stone. But one of the things I learned very quickly is how to do batch files, shell scripts, Perl, some third-party programming languages a little bit. You know, those types of things are effectively the same idea and in fact have some of the same fundamentals as PowerShell and Python. So it's one of those where I've already learned up to, halfway. I just need to learn what's different with Python. I just need to learn what's different with PowerShell. And so that's what I did. I started learning those technologies, and you're just adding on to the knowledge you already have so that you can create a Python script that does this, that you can create a PowerShell that does this. That's valuable. So once you sort of learn, same thing, you've probably seen this. Once you learn how to use Microsoft Excel, well, it's very easy to use Google Sheets. It's very easy to use Apple Numbers because it's all basically the same idea. Some of the syntax is different. Some of the nuances have been changed between those. But at the end of the day, it's a spreadsheet. Same thing with word processing. Same thing with networking, protocols. The foundation is there. So get that foundation in place and you'll be fine. It's very, very similar and easy to move between them. Now, it's not quite the same when you're working with a programming language. And I think in the industry, we don't do a very good job of differentiating a scripting language with an application development language. People just say, you need to know how to code because they put code. This code is this monolithic thing that's sort of on top of it. The world is code. And in fact, it doesn't work that way. It frustrates me sometimes to see questions for people starting out that have gone through the process and they want to be in IT and they talk about wanting to do network management, server management, operating system administration, be able to manage security, to be able to understand the protocols. They want to do IT. And people will, in the end, people who are around them who have good, they're trying to help. They tell people, well, you need to learn how to code. And so they start learning C++, or they start learning how to build mobile apps or whatever it happens to be. And they find, in the particular one I was just reading, the person did this and said, I hated that. So I'm just going to bail out of this whole IT thing because the whole writing code is just ridiculous. And I don't blame them. I hate writing code too. Not what I want to do either. And it turns out in IT, we don't write code. We don't learn to code in IT. We do scripting. You know, technically speaking, that is programming. Got air quotes there, programming. It's not, it's scripting. That's not programming. I think programming is when you're building an app. You're building a mobile app, you're building a web-based app, you're building a Windows app, you're building a Mac OS app. That's a whole lifetime of skills you have to learn to do programming. We are managing the data. We are protecting the data. We are designing and implementing the networks. We're building the roads that all this data drives on, and we're building in the technologies to protect the data when it goes from place to place. That's a whole career's worth of things for IT. And those two things don't really meet. IT people don't do coding. The people who do coding and programming, they don't do IT. As badly as companies are trying to squeeze these things together, you've certainly heard of those scenarios where they've tried to take the development side and squeeze it into operations. And it turns out that didn't work at all because each one of those is so different and has an entire career's worth of expertise that's required. One person can't do that. It's not possible. But being able to automate and orchestrate the cloud is really fancy scripting. That's really what it is. And the fancy scripting you would do primarily with Python allows you to manipulate and automate cloud-based services. And that's really where this push has come from, to make automation more front and center of IT. Because I will tell you, the people that have implemented cloud-based services almost never are able to orchestrate it to its full capacity. In some cases, not much automation at all. And if you can find somebody to make that cloud-based service dance, that is a valuable skill that employers are able and willing to spend a lot of money on to get you hired. And that's why I bring that up and sort of emphasize that. I think it's an important part of this. So get knowledgeable, get good with Python, get good with PowerShell, and then you can kind of expand from there. But if you know one or both of those, you are going to do very, very well. If not very, very well from an employer's perspective, maybe they don't appreciate your PowerShell skills. Maybe they don't appreciate your Python skills, but they will certainly be assigning you things to do that can be automated. And so you can automate things that normally you would be sitting there and going through the motions constantly to do this, and you can just make it easier, and then you can go do something else. So that's the benefit of having that knowledge. It's a good bit of knowledge to have. And if you're somebody who's working along the lines of moving up, we often say leveling up in our industry is very common. I started at the help desk. I was there 6 months, and then I leveled up into workstation management. I leveled up into server management. Then I leveled up to the networking team. Then I leveled up into security. You know, those are the levels we talk about, but you have to have something behind you. It's not time that creates that capability. It's you. It's not time that somehow, well, I've been here 6 months, so it's time to level up. No, it doesn't work like that. You got to work on your skills. You got to work on your Python. You got to work on your PowerShell. You got to work on your networking. You got to understand the protocols. You got to work on a particular operating system, a particular application. You become the expert in that thing. Find your niche. Find the thing that excites you. Go learn everything you possibly can about it. And even then, you're probably not going to learn everything about it. We often never do. But we learn a lot. We learn 75 to 90% of that product technology, which puts you probably at the top 1% of people who even know anything about that technology. Well, that's a valuable skill that you can then take to a potential employer and say, I'm very knowledgeable in this particular technology. You should hire me and pay me a lot of money. And it turns out they do that. I'm living proof of having moved up that way through the ranks, working in IT, sort of learning technology as we go, understanding the hardware, moving into servers, understanding server operating systems, becoming expert in the networking side of things, understanding the protocols, moving into security, understanding next-gen firewalls and implementing and designing those in some of the biggest networks in the world. That's where you want to be, because those are skills that people are willing to pay for. And then there's going to be skills 5 years from now. We just talked about this in the last study group. There will be skills 5 years from now that we haven't even come up with yet. This industry moves constantly under our feet. We have no idea what's coming down the road, what the next popular thing is going to be, and what employers will be willing to pay for. But I guarantee you in 5 years from now, we will be talking about technologies that did not exist today. And that's I think the great benefit of IT is that you now get to decide, do you want to be an expert in something that nobody else has even seen before? That's a new technology that the world is just starting to understand. And that's usually a great opportunity for people in IT to be able to move into a role that is needed, wanted, desired by these employers, and they're willing to pay for it. That's a great place to be. And it happens all the time. I mean, look where we are with the cloud. Look where we are with virtualization. Look where we are with cloud-based services. Look where we are with technologies running in our own data centers. Some of the things we're using today weren't around 5 years ago. So and containers is a perfect example of that. A technology that we sort of used extensively on the mainframe side is now something we're using extensively on our personal computer side. And it's sort of the traditional way you'd look into doing those. That's where you should be looking, is not just, well, I'm going to get that help desk job that doesn't pay very well. I really could go do something. I could go be a bartender and make as much as somebody at help desk. Yeah, you could probably make more. You probably make more money as a bartender than working at a help desk in IT. 5 years from now, though, the person at the help desk is going to be making 5 times what the bartender is making. So that's the difference. Maybe not 5 times, but an incremental amount of what that bartender is going to be making. I guess it depends on where you tend bar, right? Some bars pay very well, some not so much, but it's very possible. You have to kind of look at this as a long-term investment, and being able to get in the door, start at the bottom, work hard, learn as much as you can, and it is remarkable how fast you move up from there. This industry is ridiculous. And having been part of it and so there are times when you're just hanging on. It's just pulling you. It's amazing how fast this stuff moves. This last thing I did, this last job that I had working for someone else, was as a systems engineer for a next-gen firewall company. And we were drinking from the fire hose. We were moving fast. We were going, I've never worked so hard in such a short period of time in this industry as that last job. And that was at kind of the top of my level. There was nowhere. I was a senior systems engineer for this startup next-gen firewall company that with technology no one had seen before. Where else are you going to get that? First, it's exciting and exhilarating just to have that type of job, but now you're really using all the skills that you've accumulated through the years, and you're doing it at a very high rate of speed. Startups are sort of that way. So that's what I would recommend, is sort of look at the bigger picture. And then as you get into the industry, start looking around at where your moves will be. There may be a place to go. You may be places that make sense. And I'll, as an adjunct to that, let me also say, and there were some people sort of making fun of this in the chat room on the Professor Messer website yesterday, is that LinkedIn is one of the best places you can go to keep track of where all of these people are that you've ever worked with, or that you know, or that you've met. They're great places to connect up. One of the challenges we have in this industry is there's a lot of us that like to be alone. We like to do our own thing. But in the world of leveling up, you need help. You You need somebody who is already at that level, or somebody who's already at that company, or somebody can help you give you recommendations on where to go. And unless you have a list surrounding you of everyone you've ever worked with, finding someone that can help you with these things can be a challenge. Now, I get it. They were specifically on my chat room speaking of the folks in LinkedIn as it being more of a Facebook thing where people sort of tout the things that they've done. It's more of a braggadocious sort of scenario. And certainly there's some of that, but you don't have to read through the LinkedIn news feed, whatever they call it. I rarely look at the one that's connected to my personal account, but I only add people to my personal LinkedIn who I have worked with directly, either worked with as a customer or was my customer, or someone I've worked with in the same company. I know many of you have sent me LinkedIn requests, and you'll notice I don't add you to my list because I don't know you. I've never worked with you, and I use my LinkedIn as a network of everybody I know. So that if somebody has a job that's open that I knew from 10 years ago, and I see them post, hey, we're looking for people that know this, I go, wait, I worked with somebody who knew that. And I'll forward it to them and go, hey, you should look into this. This is a good group. I know these people. I've worked with them. I've worked with you. There's a love connection there, and you should go see what's going on. They pay pretty good. That's the value of LinkedIn. And until you really get a lot of people there, it may not be obvious the value there. And if you're in college, you're just starting out, add the people in your class. Add the people if you're in a sort of a fraternity, or if you're in a group within your college or university. Maybe you're in a technical group. Maybe you're in a group within your community. You went to meet up and you got in with a group that does web server administration, or it's a Microsoft group, or it's a Cisco user group. Meet those people and ask them, hey, it's good to meet you. Good to see you here. Hey, can I add you to my LinkedIn? They go, oh, yeah, just send me a LinkedIn request. Do that. Link them in. You've met them. They are someone you know in the industry, and it's remarkable how small this industry is. You will run into people all the time that you knew from somewhere else. And it's always nice to be able to say, oh, yeah, they're on my LinkedIn. Let me ping them and see what they think about that. Worst they can do is not reply. I've had people do that. I've had jobs come up that were fantastic opportunities, and I ping people to say, this would be so perfect for you. It's in your backyard. You don't even have to move. It's great. And then I never hear from them. And then ultimately I hear from them years later, and they say, I should have taken that job. I see you guys went public. I see the startup was successful, and I missed an opportunity to kind of get in on the ground floor. It happens. You have to make those decisions. But if you don't have the list of people to kind of hook up and make the love connection, then some of these things will never happen. And of course, you can reach out to people and say, I'm looking for a job to level myself up. Does anybody have anything open or know anybody who's hiring for this particular skill set? And these are people you've worked with before. In this industry, the vast majority of people you will meet will want to help you. And that's another great thing about IT. There's not a lot of drama, at least in comparison to other vertical industries that I have been part of in the past or familiar with in the past. So that's another piece of it, is go get that LinkedIn going. I mention LinkedIn not because it is the best thing you would ever hope to see is LinkedIn, but right now it's the only thing that really connects people at a professional level that is separate from something like Facebook that is more of a personal level. And if you do LinkedIn well, it's really going to be beneficial throughout your entire career. Don't worry about the braggadocious stuff and the ads that come through and recruiters that want to bother you. That's just normal. Just be ready for some of the nonsense. But the important part is just keeping track of where everybody is and pinging them every once in a while. You never know. You might be in a particular town. You're traveling on business. You know this particular person is there. You can send them a LinkedIn and say, hey, I'm available for lunch. Why don't we get together? See what's up. There's that book, Never Eat Lunch Alone. I just definitely messed up the title. Never eat alone. Never have lunch alone. This is bad because there it is. Never eat alone. This is a presentation I saw from the author Keith Ferrazzi, who talked about he talked about being somewhere and having lunch. And if you're having lunch by yourself, you're missing an opportunity to network with someone else. And he's not wrong. I've had a number of lunches alone, and I would look back thinking, I missed an opportunity because I was in this town. I was in this place. There was somebody nearby. We could have at least got to eat, right? Got to eat lunch. So that's one of those perfect examples of eating. This is where's Keith's book? There it is. I would do badly not to show you the cover of Never Eat Alone. And it was one of those I saw him talk. He came into the company I was working with. He did a presentation, and then we all got a copy of the book. It was like Oprah. You got a book, and you got a book, and you got a book. It was back when they had books, and you got a book, and I brought the book home. Where's the book now? I don't know. I don't know where it is. But I do everything with digital anyway, so I wouldn't have drug it anywhere. I would just get the digital version and read it. It was a great way to do it. Other questions in the chat room. We'll go through a couple of these. I know we're sort of past the top of the hour. We're going to keep going a little bit. I wonder how many recruiters try to hit you up, Professor. I don't tend to get very many recruiter calls at all, interestingly enough. I never really have, and I don't know why that is. In the industry, there are about 2 or 3 recruiters that I've ever worked with in my career, because once you find a good recruiter, and you know what I'm talking about, because there's lots of bad recruiters, once you find a good one, you stick with them. You keep their name. They ping you every 6 months, or they ping you every time there's a job out there that maybe you know someone. They're very good at networking with you. And I just don't tend to have people call me directly. Now, these days, it wouldn't make sense. I'm sort of doing my own thing now. I have my own company, and it wouldn't make sense to contact me. And I don't put my credentials on LinkedIn and my certifications on LinkedIn because I'm not looking for recruiters to contact me. So some of this is sort of intentional. They don't talk to me because I've made it so that they don't have anything to talk to me about, if you will. At the time, though, a good recruiter is a valuable, valuable, valuable asset. I have worked with recruiters through the years that every time I thought, all right, I have had it with this place where I am working. That was a bad thing. Or we just got bought, and now they've suddenly told all of us, well, you're all going to have to reapply for your jobs. They do one of these dumb corporate things where you get bought, and then they force everybody to reapply to a job that you've been doing for 5 years. It's the weirdest thing. To the same people you've been working with. I don't know, but that's corporations for you. But that's one of those things that kind of brings you back to LinkedIn and goes, let me send a note to my recruiter and see what's going on in his world. And maybe he has some ideas for me. It's always good to have that option that you can reach out to the recruiter and say, what's on your list? What you got? Because I might want to go make a jump somewhere. And sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't. Can you have an IT side hustle? Well, of course you can. It will depend on the employment relationship you have. In some countries, there are very strict rules and regulations around what you can do. Many jobs are contractual, and the contract limits what you are able to do. In the U.S., we tend to have very open employment, and it works both ways. Some people feel it is good, and some people feel it is bad. But for many and most states in the United States, you are able to quit your job whenever you would like and go work somewhere else. At the same time, your employer is able to fire you at any moment and send you on your way without any notice. So the fact that it works both ways, I think, is lost on people sometimes. They think it's not fair that your employer should just be able to show up one day and fire you for no particular reason. And as long as you are not a protected class in this country, that would be someone who is a minority or by law protected from that type of action. You can just walk into work one day and they can just fire you. There doesn't even have to be a reason. Just fire you and off you go. But what people don't realize is that you can do exactly the same thing. We tend to give a 2-week notice in the United States. It's more of a polite thing to do, but you can tell your employer, I'm going to be taking another job, and in 2 weeks will be my last day. And that's pretty common. It's pretty normal. It's expected. It's proper. It's polite. Is it required? It's not required. There's no legal reason that you would need to do that. We don't tend to have employment contracts in the U.S. But if you are in one of those rare jobs in the U.S. where you do have an employment contract, then the terms of your employment will be all written down on that piece of paper. But for the vast majority of us, we can just decide at any time that we would like to take a different job, and we can go do that. Along those same lines, because there is no contract, and as long as there is no conflict between what we are doing and our current day employer, you can do whatever you'd like at night. You could come home and have your own internet certification publishing business, which is what I did. I had my own IT side hustle because I was traveling constantly. I was on a plane on Monday. I would fly everywhere throughout, in some cases, the world, but mostly U.S. I'd be on the planes in airports and hotels until Friday, and I'd fly home on Friday. That was my week. So every night I was in a hotel. Well, when my day, most of all the work that I did during the day was from 9 in the morning until 5, and then I was done for the day. Well, that gave me the afternoons, or the evenings rather, to do whatever I would like. I could go downstairs and sit in a bar in a hotel, or I could work on some A+ certification training materials. And that's sort of where this all started, is just because I was idle at night. I was away from my family, and I thought, how can we build something of this? How can we make something that's valuable, that's a win-win, that this would be something good for people? They would have access to it at either a very low or no cost, and then be able to expand that out. And maybe someday I could do that full time. That was the dream. And so that's what I started to do. Now, before that, there was other jobs that I've had where I've done consulting work after hours. So I would leave my corporate IT job and I would go work with a small company that just had 4 or 5 computers. They just needed somebody to make sure antivirus was updated, that everything was being backed up, that new applications were installed, that type of thing. So that's it. And as long as you are not directly conflicting with your employer during the day, that's perfectly reasonable to do. In most places in the country, in the United States anyway, what you do outside of work, as long as it does not have some pre-existing conflict that's written usually within your employee handbook, as long as you are not conflicting with something there, you're using your own equipment, you have your own laptop with your own things that you are doing, and you are being billed directly, it has nothing to do with your day job, then you can do whatever you want at night. So that's it. Some people do coding. They do develop their own applications. Some people are so well skilled that they can do IT during the day and do programming at night. There's not a lot of folks like that, but there are folks that do that. I have had in the past my own company where I made Windows-based network management software. So I did some coding in my lifetime. That's sort of where that diatribe of coding is not scripting comes from, is that I've done that. So I can give you a perspective of the differences of having a company that builds and writes applications versus somebody who's doing scripting and IT, because I did both of those at the same time. During the day, I would script for IT. During the night, I would write applications. So it's a weird, wild world that I have sort of brought myself to. But you'll notice I don't do that today. That I did the programming and had my own software company, Messerhaus Software, sort of building off the German name that is my last name. But that is something that eventually I got to it and thought, this is not an enjoyable thing for me. This is not my passion. This is not something I think I can do for the next 20 years. So let's just not do any more of that. And we sort of shift gears. So sometimes it's not more, you sort of hop around. Let's try this. Well, let's try this. Well, let's try this. And you keep doing different things. And it really wasn't burnout as much as it was me realizing this is not enjoyable. I got to tell you, coding, from my perspective, not enjoyable. Not something I love. I did it. It was, and what we were selling software to some big companies. It was software that managed, at the time, Novell NetWare systems. There was nothing else like it out there. We were having a lot of fun. But I just didn't like it. And that's really the decisions you have to make. At some point, you get into it and you realize, not what I want to do. In IT, at least you have the option to do something else. if you were a long haul trucker and you're in the truck and you're thinking, I do not like doing this. Well, what else are you going to do? You've trained and have been licensed to be a long haul trucker. I guess I could be a short haul trucker. That's the same thing though, just short. You can't like do something completely different. I would like to be able to, load the trucks. I would like to be able to work on the engine of the trucks. I would like to be able to manage the entire logistics process. Those are things you just can't do as a long haul trucker. So that's a good example of IT gives you opportunities and the ability to pivot that really no other industry has. This is a remarkable place to be, which is another reason why all of this really is exciting to me, is that you could get a job today that gives you skills that allow you to pivot to do anything else. And at the same time, pays pretty good. I'm saying that really sarcastically. It pays really good. I mean, they pay you to do this? Really? Yeah. And they pay you well. So that's the idea. That's why I think more than anything, that's what keeps me going with this. I do enjoy doing this. This is not like coding to me. This is exciting. There are things happening. We get to see things happen in real time. People send me information, emails, messages, direct comments all the time, talking about how much they have learned, what they've done with it, the job they got. There are people that have sent me notes that started with me 10 years ago, and I would just get an email from them today say, today I went from help desk to servers to network, and now I'm doing this in cybersecurity. And I started off making this much money. Now I'm making these six-figure salaries. And all because I kind of started off down low and we went up high. Where else could you do that? It's remarkable. So this is a huge opportunity for all of us to learn, to do something exciting, to do something that helps other people, and to do something that helps your own family. And I think that's a really good place to be. Let's kind of summarize or finish things up with this, because it's a really good question that came up about boot camps. Boot camp. Is boot camp education looked down on? Boot camps. This is a question that does come up from time to time. And the first thing that I would need to know is what a definition of a boot camp is to you. I'll give you my definition, and then we can work through this, because this is a term that the industry loves to use. The IT industry especially loves to use the term boot camp. First, it sounds cool. It's boot camp. We're going to go to boot camp. But it doesn't necessarily tell you what's happening. A lot of these times, and we'll talk specifically about certification boot camps, is that they are trying to teach you everything you need to know to pass a certain certification exam in a week. Does anybody reasonably think that they would be able to take everything that's in the CompTIA exam objectives and somehow push it into your brain in a week's time? If you've never gone through this, the answer is no. You're not going to do that. It doesn't work. There's a whole physics problem there. There's a time motion issue that you just can't do it. It's just not possible to start from ground zero and learn everything you have to know in 1 week. I would argue probably not possible to even do that in 2 weeks. I think that's pretty solid. There's no way you're going to do that in 2 weeks. The industry, though, has sort of used the term boot camp to talk about how we're going to cram it into you in such a short period of time. And you're not going to be able to do that. With IT, there's nuance. There is a broad scope. There's just too much information in too short of a period of time. So anyone who's saying, we'll get you certified in a week, we'll get you certified in 2 weeks, no, they won't. If anything, there's the only way you could do that is if you were, if you had some prior knowledge of exactly what the exam might look like. That's the only way you could do it. That's in the world of any world, not just IT, that's cheating. There's no way you can learn everything you need to learn in 2 weeks. The option, though, let's say you've already been working on this. You're already sort of familiar with these topics. You've already gone through a number of training classes, And now you're going to go to the boot camp to kind of bring things home. And it's going to take a week or 2 weeks to kind of make things solid. Well, that you already know it. You already went through training. You're going through training to see if you know you got trained. That doesn't make sense either. That's a waste of time, especially considering the cost of these boot camps, which in some cases are $2,000 or more just for a week. So now let's talk at what other people say a boot camp is, because I have in my local area, there is a community college that does tout having an A+ boot camp. Their A+ boot camp is an entire semester. That's not a boot camp. But they use the term boot camp as a marketing tool to get you excited. The boot camp. Yeah, it's going to boot camp. They try to get you in with the words. They're competing for people. They want people in seats. Other training facilities are using the term boot camp, so they're going to use the term boot camp. They're not using it in the same way. They're using it as a way to show you they're going to be teaching this in a very regimented fashion over an entire semester of time. Okay, well that's exactly what you want. That's normal train. That's a training class. That's not a boot camp. That's training class. So it also depends on what someone's definition of boot camp happens to be. But generally speaking, broadly speaking, boot camps really aren't worth the money. Broadly speaking, they are very expensive. It seems like they're more directed towards companies with training budget and travel budget or travel budget that would like to send you to a class or sometimes do it online. But almost never is a boot camp worth your time or money. It just isn't. It just doesn't make sense. Nothing about it makes sense. And they will give you guarantees. It's a money back. We'll refund the cost of your certification exam. They go through the whole thing. The one I love is if you don't pass your certification exam after this boot camp, they'll give you the money back for the certification. Well, it's what, $200 out of the $4,000 they took of me? That's just makes sense. Why don't they just go ahead and hand out the $200 to everybody? They're still left with $3,800 per person. So yeah, of course they make that arrangement. Of course they tell you that's guaranteed, that you don't have to, if you don't pass the exam, we'll pay for it for you. Well, of course they will. It's just a numbers game. So that's why I don't generally consider boot camps to be worth even looking at. But if you see one, just start breaking it down and take some of these things to mind. You should be able to look at it and say, how long is this boot camp? Who's putting it on? And are they making any ridiculous statements like, we'll pay for this or we'll give you your money back? Because if they are, that doesn't make a lot of sense either. That means it's either cost too much to begin with, or maybe they really aren't teaching you what you need in a very short period of time. So, of course, the chat room says, okay, Professor Messer, can you make a boot camp series? Yes. In fact, I have a boot camp series already for the 220-1001, the 220-1002, the 220-1101, and working on one for the 220-1102. And it's called Professor Messer's CompTIA 220-1101 A+ certification training course. That is as short as I can make it, which turned out to be what, 9 hours? That's 9 hours of time and being able to go through it. And that's more than just sitting in a room for 9 hours. That's not one day of a boot camp. That is an extended amount of training, and because you have to include time with the books, time with the labs, time with the Q&A, everything that's there. That's the best I can do for you. It's not designed to be short. It's not designed to be easy, because this is not short and this is not easy. It does take time. There's a reason employers want you to have these certifications, because not everybody has one. They're really hard to get. You have to spend time. You have to work at earning these certifications, and employers know this. So part of what an employer does when they're saying, we would like someone to have their A+ certification, and I see this argument all the time, yeah, but experience is really more important. We're not saying it isn't. And we're actually, in some cases with some employers, it actually isn't. But we're not saying that one replaces the other. We're saying they work together, that it would be great if you had both. But if you have none, at least get one of them. That's what we're talking about. So yes, of course you need experience. You also need to know somebody who works there. You also need to have some practical knowledge. You also need formal education. You need a lot of things. But experience alone isn't going to be enough. It never is. I worked with a lot of people who were very, very, very experienced. There have been people I've met in my career doing this that were brilliant in what they knew. But unfortunately, the number of those people had no ability to communicate with another human being and were often seen as difficult to work with, difficult to get information out of. They're not returning phone calls. They were brilliant and yet weren't able to get that brilliance out to other people and use it properly. That's what I happen to see. So it's sort of a combination of things. I would actually argue with you that experience is important. But if I had to pick one skill that was better than any other during the job hunting process, I would say it's communication. I would say the ability to look across the table and look at someone in the eye and explain to them information that they are asking you about and talk to them in a way that they can understand and keep track of it, maybe draw some diagrams, talk about where we're at with this question. Those tend to be more valuable in a longer term than any of those other skills. Now, those other skills are, of course, important. You still need an education. You still need experience. You still need a certification. But I would say the one thread throughout all of the IT jobs that I've had in my career, and I've had quite a few, all the IT jobs I've had in my career, the one thread that's common throughout all of them, and in fact, one of them that was dramatically important, is having that ability to talk to people, to communicate with people, and to email with people. Being able just to communicate is a very valuable skill, perhaps even more so with IT, because with IT, we're dealing with a .rev and a 0-day vulnerability and having to break through the automaton and understand the nuances of a particular signature update. How do you talk to anybody off the street? They have no idea what you're talking about. But if you can somehow put that into a way that anybody can understand and that you can have a nice conversation without dragging it into the world of acronyms and ridiculousness, you can do better at almost every job that you will run into. This is kind of not an IT thing. It's more of a overall. But I think in IT, it helps the most if you're able to be the translator. I call them the universal translator people. They're the ones that can take any crazy topic and somehow spit it out in a way that makes more sense. And it's a skill you have to work on over time. It's a skill that you have to go to training for. It's a skill you have to constantly check yourself on. I have the benefit of doing this and then watching myself afterwards, because I'll record a training session and then I have to edit that training session. I don't have someone else do it. I go through and listen. I listen to everything I say, and then I start to notice, oh, I'm saying that a lot. The verbal crutches we use, the words we use to kind of get us around issues, because I don't have a script. I'm just talking in these videos. So I could write a script, but then I would be looking at the screen and I would be talking like this, and you would see my eyes moving back. Nobody wants that. So I think not having a script is useful, but if I can do it in a way where it's at least reasonable for the people watching, that can be valuable. That's a good skill from anywhere. So I think that's, if you wanted to pick something, go get familiar with Python, go get familiar with PowerShell, and go get familiar with looking people in the eye and telling them about things. I mentioned that in a previous study group. I talked about a class I took on how to present. And the first thing they did was have you stand in front of the room and say nothing. And it's interesting what you do. You got to stand there for a minute, stand there for 60 seconds and do nothing. Now, what do you do? Where do your hands go? How do you look? Do you just stand in one place? Do you shuffle around? Do you put your hands in your pocket? What do you do? And they record this, they put it on videotape, and we rewind the tape, and then we watch ourselves on the tape. And then we get to see, yeah, I look kind of funny when I'm standing there with my hands, next to me like this. That looks silly. You ever see those pictures? They show the pictures. Everybody's lined up receiving their award, and they got their hands in front of them like they're getting ready to set a pick in the NBA. Like somebody's about to drive the lane, and like they want to stop them. I'm not sure what that is. And they say, why don't you just put your hands to your side? And then we did 60 more seconds. We just standing with our hands to our side. And then we go to the tape. We look at the recording of us doing it. That looks perfectly normal. Did it feel normal? It did not. It didn't feel normal at all. It felt weird. But to people watching, it looked perfectly reasonably normal. It didn't have your hands not behind you. They're not in front of you. They're not in your pocket. Just to your side. So it's interesting when you take some of these classes and you start looking at the nuances of communication and how you are doing it. It's not just any one thing. It's a mixture of many different things all working together. In some cases, things you didn't even know were happening because you didn't have a chance to look at it. So that's what I would say. I would say Python and where you put your hands. Those are your two takeaways. That's an odd set of takeaways for a study group, isn't it? But that's where we are. That's what we do here. That's our study group. Hopefully that's something you can at least ponder and think about as we go through the rest of the month. Thank you for being here on this study group. We do these all the time. If you're wondering when the next study group is going to be, go to professormesser.com/calendar, and that's exactly where you will find when our next event is going to be. We're going to do one of these next week. Stop back by on Wednesday of next week. We have a Network Plus study group, and the Wednesday after that is a Security Plus study group. All new questions, same format, but all new questions, and we'll do Q&A at the end just like this. There's always something going on. Keep checking back on the Professor Messer website, and I would highly recommend you subscribe to our YouTube channel and click the bell if you have not already, because there will be a metric ton, a full 1.5 metric tons of 220.1102 videos being released over the next number of weeks. We've already released 60-something videos with the 1101 series. Now it's time to do the 1102 series. I've already shot some yesterday. I've already edited some of those videos this morning. They're coming out soon, so I don't want you to miss them. Make sure you subscribe. And if you like this video, we'd love it if you click the thumbs up. The very least thing that you could possibly do, and the very most thing that I would appreciate, is you doing a thumbs up. That would be super awesome. Thank you so much for doing that. Thank you for being here. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for being here in the first hour. Thanks for your questions and your support in the second hour. We love doing these live streams, and we're so glad you're here to do it with us. Thank you for being here, and we will see you next time on the A+ study group. Thanks, everybody.